The wind screamed across the rooftop helipad, whipping Mara Ellington's tailored blazer against her ribs. But nothing cut deeper than the smirk on her assistant's face when he suggested the janitor fly her helicopter. What started as a joke, a cruel little power game played 60 stories above Manhattan, turned into 90 seconds that shattered everything she thought she knew about competence disguise and the invisible people who keep the world turning. The man in the gray coveralls didn't just fly that machine. He commanded it like an extension of his own heartbeat. And when he set it down, without a whisper of turbulence, Mara Ellington realized she'd just made a bet she couldn't afford to lose. If you're watching from New York, Tokyo, London, or anywhere dreams and desperation collide, drop your city in the comments. Let me see how far this story travels. Because what happened next, it changed everything. The morning started like every other Thursday, which is to say, badly. Mara Ellington stood at her corner office window on the 58th floor of the Ellington Dynamics Tower, watching the sunrise paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and rust. Her reflection stared back at her 34 sharp-featured dark hair, pulled into a ruthless bun, eyes that hadn't truly rested in 6 years. Behind her, spread across the mahogany conference table, lay the wreckage of a deal that was supposed to save everything. "The Morita Group's gone cold," she said, not turning from the window. Her voice carried that particular flatness that came from delivering bad news so often it lost its sting. Akiro's assistant sent another delay notice, third one this month. Colin Voss, her executive assistant, looked up from his tablet. He was 30, blonde, with the kind of bone structure that opened doors and the kind of ambition that burned them down afterward. "We could sweeten the terms," he offered, but his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "We've sweetened them twice. Any more sugar, and we're giving away the company." Mara finally turned her heels, clicking against the Italian marble. "No, this needs a personal touch. I need to get to Sato." "Sato?" Colin's eyebrows rose. "Hideo Sato hasn't left that island compound in 7 years. He's practically a hermit, if Morita's using him as an advisor. Then Sato's the one who's actually making the decisions." Mara cut him off, moving to the table and pulling up the file on her tablet. Hideo Sato's face stared back at her weathered wise, completely unimpressed by corporate theater. "Akiro's just the face. Sato's the conscience. I convince him the deal moves." Colin glanced at his own screen finger swiping through logistics. His compound is on a private island 40 nautical miles off the coast. In this weather, commercial flights are grounded. Charters won't touch it. "You'd need a helicopter." Mara's jaw set. We have one. We have one collecting dust on the roof because your regular pilot quit last month." Colin's expression shifted into something that might have been concern if you didn't know him better. "And the replacement we contracted hasn't cleared background yet. Unless you want me flying it, which I promise you, you don't." The intercom on Mara's desk crackled. "Ms. Ellington Maintenance reports the rooftop helipad needs inspection. The Bell 429's been sitting idle, and they want to run a systems check." Mara pressed the button. "Fine. Have them do it now. I want that bird ready to fly by this afternoon." She released the button and met Colin's eyes. For a moment, something passed between them, the weight of everything riding on this deal, the board breathing down her neck, the quarterly earnings that would decide whether Ellington Dynamics continued as a family legacy or became another acquisition headline. "I'll make it happen," Colin said, already moving toward the door. "One way or another." The words hung in the air long after he left. By 11 a.m., Mara was on the roof. The helipad sat like a steel island on top of the tower, surrounded by nothing but sky and the distant geometry of New York's skyline. The wind up here was vicious October in the city, with winter showing its teeth early. It grabbed at her blazer, whipped strands of hair from her bun, made her eyes water. The Bell 429 sat in the center of the landing circle, its white and chrome body gleaming despite weeks of neglect. Beautiful machine, powerful, useless without someone who could fly it. Colin was already there talking to someone in gray coveralls. As Mara approached, she caught the tail end of the conversation. "Just need you to check the hydraulics. Make sure everything's responding." Colin's voice carried that particularly condescending edge he reserved for people he considered beneath notice. "Think you can handle that, or should I call someone qualified?" The man in the coveralls didn't respond immediately. He was crouched beside the helicopter's landing skid, running his hands along the strut, with the kind of careful attention that suggested he actually knew what he was looking at. Mid-30s, Mara estimated. Broad shoulders under the gray fabric. Hands that had seen work. Dark hair needed a trim. The kind of face you'd pass 100 times without noticing, except for the eyes. When he glanced up at Colin's comment, his eyes were winter sky blue and absolutely calm. "I can handle it," he said. His voice was quiet, textured like gravel on a country road. Colin snorted. "That's what the last maintenance guy said before he couldn't even find the fuel gauge." He turned as Mara approached, his expression shifting into something professionally pleasant. "Ms. Ellington, I was just briefing the custodial staff on the helicopter inspection." Custodial staff. Mara's gaze slid to the man in coveralls taking in the name patch stitched above the breast pocket, Jack Rourke. So this was one of the building's janitors. She'd signed off on the custodial contract renewals last quarter, but couldn't remember ever actually meeting any of them. They were supposed to be invisible. That was the point. "Can he inspect it properly?" she asked Colin, though her eyes stayed on Rourke. "Oh, I'm sure he'll do his best." Colin's smile had edges. "Though I'm not certain best translates to competent when we're talking about a multi-million-dollar aircraft." Something flickered across Rourke's face there, and gone so fast Mara almost missed it. Not anger, not even offense, just recognition, like he'd heard this exact dismissal 1,000 times before and had long since stopped caring. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag pulled from his pocket. "I can run the pre-flight checklist," he said, still in that quiet voice. "Make sure she's airworthy. That's what you need, right?" "What we need," Colin said, "is an actual pilot, not a..." "Colin." Mara's voice cracked like a whip. She was tired. Tired of the board meetings. Tired of the passive-aggressive emails from Tokyo. Tired of men underestimating each other for sport. "Let him do the inspection. We're wasting time." Colin's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "Of course." Rourke moved toward the helicopter with the kind of economy of motion that came from muscle memory. He ran his hand along the fuselage, checked the rotor mast, peered into the engine cowling. Mara found herself watching despite herself. There was something about the way he moved, purposeful, precise, like he was reading a language written in metal and mechanics. The wind gusted harder, and Mara pulled her blazer tighter. The city sprawled below them, indifferent to her problems. Somewhere down there, regular people were having regular Thursdays. Nobody was betting their family's legacy on a deal with a reclusive Japanese advisor who might not even take the meeting. "She's clean," Rourke called out, straightening from the cockpit door. "Fuel's good. Hydraulics responding. Avionics look solid." He paused, and something almost like amusement touched the corner of his mouth. "Whoever flew her last knew what they were doing. Maintenance logs are perfect." "That was Jonathan Hayes," Mara said. "He flew rescue missions in Alaska before I hired him. Very particular about his aircraft." "Shows." Rourke closed the cockpit door with a gentleness that seemed almost reverent. "Bird like this deserves respect." Colin made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been contempt. "Shame Hayes decided he missed Alaska more than he liked your salary. Now we're stuck with..." He gestured vaguely at the helicopter, the sky, the impossible logistics of getting Mara to Sato's island. This situation. The wind howled. The city glittered below, beautiful and brutal. And Mara felt something snap inside her, not breaking exactly, but shifting, realigning. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the board's ultimatum hanging over her head like a guillotine. Maybe it was just the sheer absurdity of standing on a helipad with a multi-million-dollar helicopter and no one to fly it. She looked at Rourke, really looked at him. The gray coveralls, the careful hands, the steady eyes that had seen something somewhere that regular janitors never saw. "Can you fly it?" she asked. The question landed like a stone in still water. Colin's head snapped toward her. "Mara, can you fly it?" she repeated, holding Rourke's gaze. For a moment, he didn't answer. The wind filled the silence, and somewhere far below, a siren wailed. Then slowly, something changed in his expression. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one haunted and knowing. "Yeah," he said, "I can fly it." Colin laughed, actually laughed sharp and disbelieving. "Oh, this is perfect. Ms. Ellington, you can't be serious. He's a janitor. He probably can't even drive stick, let alone pilot a... I'll make you a deal." Mara interrupted the idea, forming even as she spoke it. Reckless. Stupid. But God, she was so tired of being careful. "You fly this helicopter just a circuit around the building, nothing fancy, and I'll marry you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Colin's mouth opened, closed. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Mara kept her eyes on Rourke. "One circuit. Show me you can handle it. If you can, we'll talk about you flying me to a meeting this afternoon." "And the marriage proposal," Colin's voice dripped acid. "Was a joke," Mara said, though something in her chest felt tight and strange. "Obviously." But Rourke was still watching her with those winter blue eyes, and she couldn't quite read what she saw there. Amusement, challenge. Something deeper. Something that looked almost like pity. "Okay," he said simply. "Okay." Colin's voice pitched up. "Okay, you're going to get yourself killed. You're going to get her killed. You're going to crash a $3 million aircraft into the side of a skyscraper because of some insane bet." Rourke walked past him toward the helicopter. He moved like a man who'd made his decision and saw no point in debating it. His hand found the door handle. Paused. "You should step back," he said to both of them. "Rotor wash can knock you down if you're too close." Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. This was completely, utterly insane. She'd just challenged her building's janitor to fly a helicopter based on nothing but gut instinct and exhaustion-fueled rebellion. But she didn't step back. Colin did, though, grabbing her arm. "Mara, please, call this off. If the board finds out..." "The board can kiss my ass," Mara heard herself say. The words tasted like freedom. "Let him fly." Rourke climbed into the pilot's seat. Inside the cockpit, everything changed. From Mara's vantage point 30 feet away, she watched Jack Rourke transform. The gray coveralls didn't matter anymore. The janitor label fell away like a shed skin. His hands moved across the control panel with the fluid confidence of a concert pianist finding his keys. Switches flipped gauges, checked systems brought online with a choreography that spoke of countless hours, countless flights, countless moments exactly like this one. The turbine whined to life. That distinctive rising pitch that made Mara's chest tighten, part fear, part anticipation. The rotor blades began to turn. Slowly at first, then faster, faster, until they became a disk of motion hovering above the helicopter's body. The sound built from a whisper to a thunder, and the wind from the rotors turned the air into a living thing pushing against Mara's body, whipping her hair into chaos. Colin was shouting something, but the words were lost in the rotor wash. The helicopter lifted, not jerked, not wobbled, not the uncertain tentative rise of someone testing their limits. It lifted smooth and vertical, like gravity had simply decided it no longer applied. 5 feet, 10, 15. 20 feet up the Bell 429, hung in the air above the helipad, perfectly stable, perfectly controlled. Mara's breath caught in her throat. Then the helicopter tilted just slightly, just enough, and performed a slow, graceful bow. The nose dipped forward in what could only be described as a flourish A purposeful display of control, so precise, it made Mara's skin prickle. The maneuver said, "Everything words couldn't. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've known all along." The helicopter pivoted. A full 360 rotation, smooth as silk, the tail boom sweeping around the compass with balletic precision. Colin had stopped shouting. His face had gone pale. Mara couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as Jack Rourke brought the helicopter back to center, aligned it perfectly with the landing circle, and descended. The skids touched concrete with a whisper, not a bump, not even a shift in the aircraft's frame. Just contact. Like the helicopter had always been sitting there, and the flight had been a dream. The rotors began to slow. The turbine wound down. The thunder faded to a hum, then to silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then Rourke opened the cockpit door and climbed out. He moved with the same quiet economy as before, but now Mara saw it for what it was. Not hesitation, not uncertainty, but the deliberate calm of someone who'd done dangerous things in dangerous places and learned to waste no motion. He walked toward them, the wind pulling at his coveralls, and stopped about 3 feet from where Mara stood frozen. "Clean circuit," he said. "No issues. She handles like a dream." Mara's voice came out rougher than she intended. "Who are you?" For the first time since she'd met him, Jack Rourke smiled. It was a small thing, sad around the edges but genuine. "Just the janitor, ma'am." The lie was so obvious it hurt. Colin found his voice. "That was you. Just how did you—" "I used to fly," Rourke said simply. Then he glanced at his watch, a cheap digital thing that had probably cost $30, and seemed to remember something. "My shift's almost up. I should get back to the third-floor restrooms. Maintenance schedule says they're due for deep cleaning." He turned to leave. "Wait." Mara's hand shot out, caught his sleeve. The fabric was worn soft under her fingers, smelled faintly of industrial cleaner, and something else, something like jet fuel and old leather. "Wait, you don't just used to fly. That was military precision. That was—" Her phone buzzed in her pocket, insistent, urgent. She pulled it out, read the screen, and felt her blood turn to ice water. The text was from Gerald Yun, head of the board emergency meeting. Friday 9 a.m. Morita deal status review. Recommend you have good news. The subtext was clear. Show progress or start packing. Mara looked up from the phone. Rourke was watching her with those calm blue eyes, and she realized he'd already clocked the panic on her face, the way her hand had tightened on the phone hard enough to make her knuckles white. "I need a pilot," she said. "I need to get to Hideo Sato's island compound. Today. This afternoon. It's 40 nautical miles off the coast, the weather's turning bad, and I have exactly 1 shot to save this deal before the board burns me." "I'm a janitor," Rourke said, but there was something careful in the way he said it. Testing her, maybe, waiting to see if she'd push. "Bullshit." The word came out sharp enough to make Colin flinch. "You just flew that helicopter like you were born in the cockpit. Whatever you were before you started cleaning my toilets, you were a pilot. A damn good one." She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline, the way his eyes carried weight that had nothing to do with age. "I need that pilot. Name your price." Something shifted in Rourke's expression. "I don't fly anymore." "Why not?" "Because people die when I fly." The words came out flat, factual, devastating in their simplicity. The rooftop went quiet, except for the wind. Colin cleared his throat. "Mara, maybe we should—" "No." She didn't look away from Rourke. "No. I don't know what happened to you. I don't know why you're cleaning floors instead of flying. But I know what I just saw. And I know desperation when I'm drowning in it." Her voice dropped, became something raw. "I've got 500 employees counting on this deal. Good people. People with families, with mortgages, with kids who need braces, and parents who need care. If this falls through, the board will gut the company. They'll sell off divisions, outsource departments, turn Ellington Dynamics into another corporate zombie shambling through quarterly earnings. Rourke's jaw tightened. That's not my problem. No, Mara agreed. It's mine. But you could help me fix it. One flight, there and back. Whatever you charge, I'll pay it. You can't afford what I'd charge. But there was something in his voice now, a crack barely visible in that calm facade. Mara pressed into it. Try me. For a long moment, Rourke didn't answer. His gaze drifted past her to the helicopter, then beyond to the city sprawling endlessly in every direction. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet she almost missed it. I have a daughter, 8 years old. Her name's Nia. He looked back at Mara, and the weight in his eyes could have crushed stone. Her mother died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. We couldn't afford the experimental treatment that might have saved her because my insurance from the military ran out and I couldn't find work that paid enough. He paused. So no, you can't afford what I'd charge, because what I'd charge is my daughter's future, and that's not for sale. The words hit Mara like a physical blow. Colin had gone very still beside her. The wind howled across the rooftop, cold and merciless. And Mara Ellington, CEO of a failing dynasty, looked at the janitor who flew like an angel and made a decision that would change everything. A trust fund, she said. Full ride. Medical school, law school, art school, whatever she wants. Full tuition, living expenses, health care. Irrevocable. Protected from creditors, from lawsuits, from every possible threat. Managed by a third-party fiduciary until she's 25. She pulled out her phone fingers, already moving. I'll have my lawyers draft it within the hour. You fly me to Sato and back. The trust is funded before we land. Walk away afterward if you want. Contract fulfilled. Your daughter's future secure. Rourke stared at her. You're serious? I'm desperate. Mara met his eyes. And I keep my promises. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Then slowly, Jack Rourke nodded. One flight, he said. No questions asked. I get you there and back, the trust is funded, and we're done. Deal. Mara stuck out her hand. His palm was calloused when he shook it, warm and solid and real. Colin finally found his voice. This is insane. You're making a binding contract with a janitor based on a 30-second helicopter stunt. Find me everything on Jack Rourke. Mara said, not looking away from the man himself. Military service, flight records, employment history. Everything. I want it on my desk in an hour. Mara. Everything, Colin. She finally turned, and whatever he saw in her face made him step back. Now. He left heels clicking angrily against the helipad's surface as he disappeared into the stairwell. Mara looked back at Rourke. You'll need time to prep. 2 hours, he said. I'll need to file a flight plan, check the weather windows, run a full pre-flight. He paused. And I'll need to make a call, arrange care for Nia. Whatever you need. Mara's phone buzzed again, another text from the board. Another reminder that time was bleeding out. We leave at 2 p.m. Can you make that work? Rourke's gaze went distant for a moment, calculating factors she couldn't see. Yeah, he said finally. I can make it work. Then I'll see you at 2. Mara turned toward the stairwell, then paused. Rourke. Ma'am. Thank you. He didn't answer, just nodded once, a small sharp motion that carried its own kind of weight. Mara left him standing on the helipad. A man in gray coveralls outlined against the vast indifference of the sky, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. In her office, the file on Jack Rourke arrived 47 minutes later. Colin dropped it on her desk with the expression that managed to be both vindicated and deeply concerned. You need to read this. Mara opened the folder. The first page was military records, honorable discharge commendations, clean service jacket. The second page made her breath catch. Pararescue. That others may live. The Air Force's elite rescue jumpers, the ones who dropped into war zones to save downed pilots, who swam through hurricanes to pull sailors from sinking ships, who did impossible things in impossible places and somehow made it look routine. 87 missions, 43 lives saved, a Silver Star for valor, a Purple Heart for wounds received in action. Flight certifications filled the next 3 pages. Rotary fixed-wing multi-engine instrument, everything up to and including tactical insertion in hostile environments. Then the record ended, abruptly, 3 years ago. After that, the file showed employment gaps, brief stints in construction, warehouse work, finally landing at Ellington Dynamics' custodial contractor 6 months ago. Clean background check. No criminal record. Spotless references from supervisors who all said the same thing. Quiet. Reliable. Keeps to himself. The final page was a photograph much younger Rourke still in uniform grinning beside a helicopter in what looked like Afghanistan. He had his arm around another soldier, and they both looked invincible in the way only young men who haven't yet learned their mortal can look. Mara stared at the photo until the edges blurred. So he wasn't lying, Colin said quietly. People really did die when he flew. He didn't say people died when he flew, Mara corrected, her voice distant. He said people die when he flies, present tense, like it's still happening, like he carries them with him. Colin was quiet for a moment. You're really going to do this? Trust your life to a janitor with PTSD? I'm going to trust my life to a decorated combat pilot who happens to clean floors. Mara closed the file. There's a difference. Mara, I need this, Colin. She looked up at him, letting him see the exhaustion she usually hid. I need this deal. I need one thing to go right, and maybe... She glanced back at the photograph at Rourke's young smile. Maybe he needs this too. Colin's expression softened fractionally. Just be careful. Please. Careful died with my father, Mara said. Now, I'm just trying to survive. At 1:47 p.m., her phone rang. The lawyers had the trust fund drawn up, ironclad, ready to execute the moment she gave the word. At 1:53, she got a text from an unknown number. This is Rourke. Pre-flight complete. Weather window closes at 4 p.m. Recommend immediate departure. Mara grabbed her coat and headed for the roof. The helicopter was waiting. So was Jack Rourke, no longer in coveralls, but in dark cargo pants and a weather-beaten jacket that had seen better days. He looked older somehow, or maybe just more himself, no longer hiding behind the janitor disguise, just a man about to do something dangerous, because a little girl's future depended on it. Ready? He asked as she approached. Mara looked at the helicopter, at the darkening clouds on the horizon, at the man who'd emerged from invisibility to become her only hope. No, she admitted. But let's go anyway. Rourke's mouth quirked. Best way to do anything worth doing. He helped her into the passenger seat, his hand steady on her elbow. The cockpit smelled like old leather and metal and possibility. As Rourke settled into the pilot's seat and began the startup sequence, Mara realized her hands were shaking. The turbine whined. The rotors began their ancient dance. And somewhere below, Colin Voss stood at his desk, a phone pressed to his ear, speaking in quiet, urgent tones to someone who definitely wasn't on the company directory. She's leaving now, he said. With the janitor. This is our window. Move the board meeting to tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. And make sure the Tokyo office knows. Mara won't be there to defend herself. He hung up, looked out the window at the helicopter rising into the storm-dark sky, and smiled. On the roof, the helicopter climbed higher, banking toward the distant ocean, where an island waited and a reclusive advisor held the keys to salvation. Neither Mara nor Rourke saw the trap closing behind them. But somewhere in the corporate machinery of Ellington Dynamics, gears had begun to turn, and by the time they returned, if they returned, nothing would be the same. The rotors beat against the sky. The storm waited ahead, and the real test had only just begun. The city fell away beneath them like a discarded skin. Mara watched through the curved cockpit glass as Manhattan transformed from concrete reality into abstract art buildings, becoming geometry, streets becoming lines, people vanishing into the theoretical. At 500 feet, the helicopter banked east, and the Atlantic opened up before them like a vast gray promise. Jack's hands moved across the controls with that same unsettling grace she'd witnessed on the helipad. Not showy, not dramatic, just competent in a way that made competence look like poetry. The collective rose and fell with micro-adjustments. His feet worked the anti-torque pedals in a rhythm so subtle she wouldn't have noticed if she wasn't watching for it. "How long?" she asked, her voice tinny through the headset. 40 minutes in good weather." Jack's eyes scanned the instrument panel, the horizon back to instruments. "Hour and change if the front moves in faster than forecast." Mara's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, 3 bars fading fast. A text from Colin Lawyers confirmed trust execution. Documents ready for signature upon landing. Another text, this one from Gerald Yoon Morita's team, requesting detailed financial projections. They're asking questions about Q3 margins. This is not a good sign. Her stomach tightened. The deal's slipping. Deals always slip. Jack adjusted their heading, compensating for a crosswind Mara couldn't feel. Question is whether you can catch it before it falls. Spoken like someone who's watched things fall. His jaw tightened fractionally. Yeah. The silence that followed had weight. Mara found herself studying his profile, the scar along his jawline she'd noticed earlier, the faint lines around his eyes that came from squinting into too many suns in too many countries, the way his shoulders carried tension like armor. "The file Colin pulled on you," she said carefully. 87 missions, 43 saves, Silver Star. Ancient history. 3 years isn't ancient. It is when you measure it in ghosts. Jack's voice stayed level, but something behind it had gone cold. "You read the file. You know what I did. What you don't know is what it costs." Mara's phone buzzed again. She ignored it. "Tell me." "Why?" "Because I'm trusting you with my life at 500 feet over open water, and I'd like to know who's flying." Jack was quiet for a long moment. The helicopter thrummed around them, steady as a heartbeat. Below, the ocean rolled in endless gray repetition. "Helmand Province," he finally said. 2021. "We got a call, F-16 pilot down in Taliban territory. Bad LZ enemy fire, the whole nightmare scenario. My team went in fast." His hands never stopped moving on the controls, but his voice had gone somewhere else. "We found him, got him loaded, started the extract." He paused. Mara waited. "RPG hit us on the way out. We didn't go down, but we should have. I kept her flying through pure stubbornness and luck. Got the pilot to safety. Got my team home." Another pause, longer this time. "But my co-pilot guy named Marcus Webb, best friend I ever had, he took shrapnel in the blast. Severed his femoral artery. Bled out before we could land." The words hung in the cockpit like smoke. "He died doing what we signed up for." Jack continued, his voice eerily calm. "But his wife didn't sign up for it. His 2 kids didn't sign up for it. And when I showed up at his funeral, and his 6-year-old daughter asked me why Daddy wasn't coming home, I didn't have an answer that meant anything." Mara felt something crack open in her chest. "That's why you stopped flying. That's why I stopped doing things that get people killed." Jack glanced at her, and his eyes were windows into something vast and aching. "I'm good at it, you know, the rescue work, the impossible extracts. But being good at something doesn't make it right. Not when the cost is other people's fathers, other people's husbands, other people's futures." "So you became a janitor." "I became invisible." He looked back at the instruments. "Figured the world had enough heroes. What it needed was someone to clean up the mess they left behind." Mara's phone buzzed. She looked down. "Colin again. Board meeting confirmed for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Gerald wants you there in person. No exceptions." Her pulse spiked. Tomorrow the meeting was supposed to be Friday. Jack's head turned slightly. Problem? They moved it up. Mara's fingers flew across her phone screen, pulling up her calendar. I'm supposed to present the Morita deal status tomorrow morning. If I don't have Sato's endorsement by then, we'll get it. The certainty in his voice made her look up. You don't know that. No, Jack agreed. But I know how to fly in bad weather, and I know how to hit narrow windows. That's what you hired me for. So let me do my job, and you focus on doing yours. Something in his words steadied her. Mara took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. Okay. Okay, Jack echoed. The helicopter cut through the sky. Ahead, the storm front gathered itself like a fist. Mara's phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the screen showed a number she recognized, Akira Morita's personal line. Her heart stopped. She answered. Akira. Ms. Ellington. His voice was carefully neutral, the kind of neutral that preceded bad news. I apologize for the short notice, but I wanted to inform you personally. The board has decided to suspend deal negotiations pending further review. The world tilted. Suspend Akira, we had an agreement. The terms were generous, perhaps too generous. A pause waited with meaning. My advisors have expressed concern that such generosity suggests desperation rather than partnership. Mara's free hand clenched into a fist. Collins, fix. The concessions he had offered without authorization. Those revised terms were offered in error. They don't represent our position. Then what does represent your position? Akira's tone sharpened. Because from where I stand, Ellington Dynamics appears to be a company in crisis, willing to sacrifice profit margin for a lifeline. That is not a partner. That is a liability. Jack's eyes flicked toward her. He couldn't hear the conversation, but he could read the tension radiating from her body. Give me 24 hours, Mara said, her voice steel over desperation. I'm meeting with Hideo Sato. Let me present our case directly to your advisor. If he endorses the original terms, we move forward. If not, we part as friends. Silence on the line, long enough that Mara thought the call had dropped. Then, Sato-san rarely takes meetings. I know. He especially does not take meetings with people who waste his time. I won't waste it. Another pause. You have until tomorrow morning, Ms. Ellington. If Sato-san endorses this partnership, I will honor that endorsement. If not... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The line went dead. Mara sat very still, phone pressed to her chest, trying to breathe around the panic clawing at her ribs. Bad news, Jack observed. The deal's suspended. Her voice came out hollow. Collins' fix made them think we're desperate. Now they're questioning everything. Are you desperate? Yes. The word tasted like truth. But not for the reasons they think. I'm desperate because 500 people are counting on me to keep this company alive, and the board would rather sell it for parts than fight for its future. Jack nodded slowly. So we make Sato understand that. He's a hermit who hasn't left his island in 7 years. He doesn't care about corporate politics. Then we don't talk corporate politics. Jack adjusted their altitude, dropping them lower as the coastline disappeared behind them. We talk about what he does care about. What does he care about? Mara pulled up the research on her phone. Sato's background, his philosophy, the interviews he'd given before his self-imposed exile. People. Legacy. He built Morita Group's reputation on treating workers like family. When automation threatened jobs in the 80s, he retrained everyone instead of laying them off. When the bubble burst, he took a pay cut before he cut a single salary. So he cares about protecting people. Yeah. Jack's expression shifted, something clicking into place behind his eyes. Then that's your pitch, not profit margins or market share. People. Show him you care about protecting your people the way he protected his. It was so simple, it hurt. Mara felt something loosen in her chest. You should have been a consultant. Consultants charge more than janitors. The corner of his mouth quirked. And they don't fly helicopters. Despite everything, Mara almost smiled. Her phone buzzed. Another text, this time from her CFO Colin, requesting emergency financial briefing. Says board wants updated projections for tomorrow's meeting. What should I send? Mara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Colin was moving fast. Too fast, like he'd been planning this. She texted back, send nothing without my explicit approval. I'll handle Colin when I return. The response came immediately. Understood. Be careful. The warning made her skin prickle. Something wrong? Jack asked. I don't know. Mara stared at her phone. My EA is acting strange. Pushing for a board meeting I didn't authorize, offering deal concessions I didn't approve. It's like he's trying to... She stopped the thought forming even as she spoke it. It's like he's trying to sabotage me. Jack's hands tightened fractionally on the controls. People who want your job don't usually wait for you to quit. Colin doesn't want my job. He wants... Mara's breath caught. He wants the board to remove me. If I fail with Marita, if I miss tomorrow's meeting, they'll have grounds to call a vote of no confidence. Colin steps in as interim CEO, proves himself during the crisis, gets the job permanently. Can he do that? If the board believes I'm incompetent? Yeah. Mara's mind raced through the implications. He's been positioning himself for months. Every mistake I've made, he's been there to help. Every success, he's been there to take credit. I thought he was ambitious. I didn't think he was dangerous. Jack finished. The words settled between them like a stone. Mara looked out at the endless ocean, the storm building on the horizon, and realized how alone she was. 40 nautical miles from land, betting everything on a meeting with a recluse while back in Manhattan, her own assistant was dismantling her career piece by piece. This was a mistake, she heard herself say. I should have stayed, confronted Colin, called an emergency board meeting myself. Too late now. Jack's voice was matter-of-fact. We're committed. Nothing behind us but water. Nothing ahead but the island. You want to win? You have to go through. And if Sato says no, then you fight harder when we get back. The simple confidence in his words was almost offensive. You don't understand. This isn't a combat mission. I can't just... Everything's a combat mission, Jack interrupted. The only difference is what you're fighting for. He glanced at her. You're fighting for 500 families. That's worth flying through a storm for. That's worth walking into a meeting you might lose. Because if you don't try, you've already lost. Mara opened her mouth to argue, but her phone rang again. Unknown number, she answered. Hello. Mara. A small voice, young and uncertain. Her breath caught. Who is this? It's Nia. Mr. Rourke's daughter. He said I could call if I needed anything. But Mrs. Chen, who's watching me, says he's flying and I shouldn't bother him. But I wanted to tell him... The words tumbled out in a rush. Jack's head turned sharply. Nia. Mara held up the phone so he could hear. Hi, Daddy. Nia's voice brightened. I'm using Mrs. Chen's phone because mine is broken. I dropped it, and the screen went all weird. Baby, is everything okay? Jack's voice had transformed all the military calm, replaced with pure parental concern. I'm fine, I just wanted to tell you I got an A on my science test. We had to build a circuit, and mine worked on the first try. Ms. Patterson said I have good hands like an engineer. Something in Jack's expression cracked open. That's my girl. I'm proud of you. Are you flying? Mrs. Chen said you were flying. You never fly anymore. I'm flying today, Jack said carefully. Just one flight. For work. Is it scary? Jack looked out at the approaching storm, the gray waves below, the impossible distance back to shore. A little, he admitted. But I've got a good co-pilot, and I'm coming home tonight. Promise. The word hung in the air like a prayer. Promise, Jack said, and Mara heard the weight he was putting on that single word. The promise to a little girl who'd already lost her mother, who couldn't afford to lose her father too. Okay, I love you, Daddy. Love you too, Nia. Be good for Mrs. Chen. I will. Bye. The line went dead. Jack's hands were shaking on the controls. Just slightly, just enough for Mara to notice. She sounds like a great kid, Mara said quietly. She's everything. Jack's voice was rough. After Sarah died, Nia's the only thing that made sense. The only thing worth... He stopped, jaw working. That trust fund you're setting up. That's not just money. That's her whole future. Medical school if she wants it. Art school. Whatever dream she has, she'll be able to chase it without worrying about student loans or insurance or any of the shit that killed her mother. The trust is already executed, Mara said. Soon as we land, it's hers, regardless of how the meeting goes. Jack's eyes cut toward her. You mean that? I mean that. Mara held his gaze. You held up your end. You're flying me through bad weather to meet a recluse on an island in the middle of nowhere. Nia gets her trust. Period. Something shifted in Jack's expression. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that looked almost like redemption. Thank you, he said simply. The helicopter shuddered as the first real turbulence hit. Jack's hands moved instantly, compensating, keeping them stable. Outside, the sky had darkened from gray to charcoal, and the first fat raindrops spattered against the windscreen. How far? Mara asked. Jack checked the GPS. 15 miles. We'll make it. The storm disagreed. It hit them like a fist, sudden, vicious, all pretense of warning abandoned. The helicopter dropped 20 feet in a downdraft that left Mara's stomach somewhere near the ceiling. Alarms shrieked. The windscreen became a blur of rain, so thick visibility dropped to zero. Hold on, Jack said, his voice preternaturally calm. The helicopter lurched sideways. Mara grabbed the door handle, knuckles white as Jack fought the controls. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating walls of rain that seemed solid enough to touch. Can you fly through this? She managed. Not through... Jack corrected his eyes, scanning instruments she didn't understand. Around. There's always a corridor. You just have to find it. He banked hard left, following some instinct or knowledge Mara couldn't perceive. The turbulence worsened for 30 seconds, long enough for Mara to question every decision that had led her to this moment, then suddenly eased. The helicopter steadied. Jack had found his corridor, a narrow channel of relatively calm air threading through the chaos. They flew through it like a needle through cloth, the storm raging on all sides, but unable to quite reach them. How did you? Mara started. Pattern recognition, Jack said. Weather moves in systems. You learn to read the systems, you can predict the gaps. Marcus taught me that. Said storms are just puzzles written in wind and water. The mention of his dead friend hung in the air. He'd be proud, Mara said, of how you're flying right now. Jack's jaw tightened. He'd tell me I'm an idiot for taking a civilian into this weather for a business meeting. Probably. Mara watched the storm blur past. But he'd also understand why you're doing it, for Nia. Yeah. Jack's voice went soft. For Nia. The GPS beeped. 5 miles, Jack announced. We're close. Through a break in the clouds, Mara caught her first glimpse of the island, a dark smudge against darker water lights twinkling like scattered stars. Sato's compound sat on the eastern shore, a complex of traditional Japanese architecture mixed with modern environmental design. Jack began their descent fighting crosswinds that wanted to push them off course. The helicopter shuddered and bucked, but his hands never wavered. They dropped through the storm layer. 200 feet. 100. 50. The landing pad materialized out of the rain, a perfect circle marked with lights perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Jack brought them down like he was landing on glass. The skids touched with barely a whisper. The rotors began to wind down. Mara sat frozen, adrenaline still singing through her veins, unable to quite believe they'd made it. Jack pulled off his headset. "Told you we'd make it." "You're insane," Mara said. "Yeah." He smiled, a real smile this time, quick and genuine. "But I'm also really good at flying helicopters." A figure appeared through the rain. An older Japanese man in a simple kimono, walking calmly toward them, despite the storm, like weather was merely a suggestion he'd chosen to ignore. "That's Sato," Mara breathed. She climbed out of the helicopter legs, unsteady on solid ground. The rain soaked through her blazer in seconds, plastering her hair to her skull. She didn't care. Hideo Sato stopped 3 feet from her. He was 70 if he was a day, with eyes that had seen too much, and a calm that radiated like heat from stone. He looked at Mara, then at Jack, still sitting in the pilot's seat. Then back at Mara. "You flew through the storm," Sato said. His English was perfect, accented, but clear. "Why?" "Because you wouldn't come to me," Mara said. "So I came to you." Sato's expression didn't change. "Many people want my endorsement. None of them fly through storms to get it. I'm not asking for an endorsement." Mara straightened her spine, rain running down her face. "I'm asking for 5 minutes of your time to explain why Ellington Dynamics deserves to partner with Morita Group. Not for profit, not for market share, for people." Something flickered in Sato's eyes, interest maybe, or curiosity. 5 minutes, he agreed. "Come, we will have tea." He turned and walked back toward the compound. Mara looked at Jack. He nodded once go, and she went following Sato through the rain, aware that everything depended on the next few minutes, and terrified she wouldn't be enough. Behind her, Jack sat alone in the helicopter and pulled out his phone. One missed call. Colin Voss. One voicemail. Jack played it. "Mr. Rourke." Colin's voice was smooth, professional, completely unthreatening. "I wanted to reach out personally to thank you for helping Ms. Ellington today. I know this was outside your normal duties. I've arranged a small bonus $5,000 to be deposited in your account this evening as appreciation for going above and beyond. No need to mention it to Ms. Ellington. Consider it a personal thank you. Talk soon." Jack stared at the phone. $5,000. Exactly enough to seem generous without raising questions. Exactly the kind of gesture that would make an hourly worker feel grateful and complicit. But Jack had spent years in hostile territory. He knew a bribe when he heard one. The voicemail continued with a click, a second message. "Oh, and one more thing." Colin's voice had changed, dropped the professional veneer. "That trust fund Ms. Ellington promised your daughter, I'd hate for there to be any complications in the execution. Paperwork can be so tricky, especially when the person who authorized it is no longer in a position of authority. Just something to think about. Have a safe flight back." The message ended. Jack sat very still in the pilot's seat, rain drumming on the cockpit glass, and felt something old and cold wake up inside him, the part of him that had learned to survive in places where people died for smaller stakes than this. Colin had just made a mistake. He'd threatened Naya. And Jack Rourke, decorated combat veteran elite rescue pilot man, who'd seen too much death and carried too many ghosts, looked out at the storm and began to plan. Inside the compound, Mara sat across from Hideo Sato in a room that smelled of rain and green tea and made no concessions to modernity. Sato poured tea with careful precision, his movements meditative. "Tell me about your people," he said. And Mara did. She didn't talk about profit margins or market synergies. She talked about Maria in accounting, who'd worked at Ellington for 23 years, who had 2 kids in college and a husband with MS. She talked about James in manufacturing, who'd started on the factory floor and worked his way up to shift supervisor, who mentored new hires and never forgot where he came from. She talked about every single person whose name she knew, whose story she carried, whose future depended on this deal, not because it would make them rich, but because it would keep them employed. Sato listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Akira thinks you are desperate," he finally said. "I am desperate," Mara admitted, "but not for myself. For them." "Why?" "Because they trusted me." The words came out raw. "My father built this company from nothing. He treated every employee like family. When he died and left it to me, I inherited more than a business. I inherited a responsibility. And I'll be damned if I let some board of directors who've never set foot on the manufacturing floor decide these people are disposable." Sato's eyes were very dark, very calm. "Your assistant Colin Voss. He offered significant concessions to close this deal quickly." Mara's stomach dropped. "Without my authorization." "I suspected as much." Sato sipped his tea. "It had the desperation of ambition rather than strategy." "Colin is—" Mara searched for words. "Colin wants my job. He sees this deal as leverage. If it fails, I'm out. If it succeeds, he takes credit." "And yet you flew through a storm to save it." "Not to save it," Mara corrected. "To do it right, your way, protecting people instead of extracting value from them." Sato was quiet again. Rain pattered against the paper screens. "Who is your pilot?" he asked suddenly. The question caught Mara off guard. "His name is Jack Rourke. He was military, para-rescue. He saved 43 lives in combat. And now he flies CEOs to business meetings. Now he cleans my offices for minimum wage because the world didn't have a place for him when he came home." Mara met Sato's eyes. "I offered him a trust fund for his daughter in exchange for this flight. Not because I wanted to exploit him, but because talent shouldn't be invisible just because it doesn't wear the right uniform." Something changed in Sato's expression, a softening subtle but unmistakable. "You see people," he said. "That is rare in your industry. I learned from my father." "Then you learned well." Sato set down his teacup with careful precision. "I will call Akira. The deal will proceed. Original terms, no concessions." Relief hit Mara like a wave. "Thank you. I promise." "Do not promise me anything," Sato interrupted gently. "Promise your people. Promise to protect them the way you protected them today, flying through storms, taking risks, seeing their value. Do that, and you honor your father's legacy." Mara's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this man who'd just saved everything. "I will," she managed. Sato smiled a small, genuine expression. "I believe you. Now go. The storm is worsening. Your pilot will need to leave soon or wait until morning." Mara stood bowed deep and respectful and turned to leave. "Ms. Ellington," Sato called. She looked back. "That man who flew you here, he has a warrior's heart and a father's eyes. Whatever he asks of you in the future, consider it carefully. Such men are rare." The words followed Mara back through the rain, back to the helicopter, where Jack waited back toward the storm they'd have to fly through to get home. Jack looked up as she approached. His expression was strange calm, but purposeful, in a way that made her think of the file she'd read: the combat missions, the impossible rescues. "How'd it go?" he asked. "We got it." Mara climbed into the passenger seat, soaked and shivering and triumphant. "Sato's calling Akira. The deal's back on." "Good." Jack started the pre-flight sequence. "Because we have a different problem now." "What problem?" "Colin." Jack handed her his phone, the voicemail still queued up. "Listen." Mara listened. With each word, her blood ran colder. When it finished, she looked at Jack with something like horror. "He's threatening Nia's trust." "He's threatening you," Jack corrected. "Nia's just the leverage, but he made a mistake." "What mistake?" Jack's smile was cold and precise. "He assumed I'd be scared. I'm not scared. I'm tactical." The rotors began to spin. "We need to get back to the city," Jack said. "Fast, before Colin can move, before that 8 a.m. meeting. We expose him or he destroys you. No middle ground." "How do we expose him?" "You let me worry about that." Jack's hands moved across the controls with deadly precision. "You just worry about staying alive while I fly us home." The helicopter lifted into the storm, and somewhere in Manhattan, Colin Voss checked his watch, smiled, and prepared for tomorrow's board meeting, where he would finally take what he'd always deserved. He had no idea what was coming for him. The storm swallowed them whole. One moment the compound's lights were visible through the rain-streaked windscreen. The next, they were inside a wall of water so thick it felt solid, and the helicopter bucked like a living thing trying to throw them from the sky. Jack's hands moved faster than thought collective down cyclic forward coordinating movements Mara couldn't track, but could feel in the way the aircraft responded, fighting for every inch of stability in air that wanted them dead. "Talk to me," Jack said, his voice cutting through the roar. "I need you focused. Tell me about Colin." "What?" Mara's fingers dug into the seat as the helicopter dropped 15 feet in a downdraft. "Colin Voss, tell me everything. When did he start working for you? Who recommended him? What does he want?" Jack's eyes never left the instruments, but his voice demanded attention. "If we're going to beat him, I need to understand him." The helicopter shuddered violently. Alarms screamed. Jack silenced them with a switch and adjusted their heading banking into the wind instead of fighting it. Mara forced herself to think past the terror. "He started 2 years ago. Harvard MBA. Impeccable references. My CFO recommended him, said Colin was hungry, ambitious, exactly what we needed to modernize operations." "And you believed him?" "I was desperate." The admission tasted bitter. "My father had just died. The board was circling. I needed someone sharp, someone who understood corporate finance better than I did." She watched Jack's hands dance across the controls. Colin was perfect. Too perfect. The helicopter lurched sideways. Through the windscreen, lightning turned the world into a photographic negative. Everything reversed inside out, wrong. "Perfect people don't exist," Jack said. "Only people who are good at hiding their flaws." What were his... Mara's mind raced backward, through 2 years of interactions, searching for cracks in Colin's polished facade. He was always there. Every meeting, every decision, every crisis. I thought it was dedication. But now you realize he was positioning himself. Jack pulled them through a violent crosswind, the helicopter tilting at an angle that made Mara's stomach flip. Making himself indispensable. Making sure no one could imagine the company without him. He's been documenting everything. The realization hit Mara like cold water. Every mistake I made, every delayed decision, every project that went over budget. He said it was for quarterly reviews, but it was building a case, Jack finished. Evidence that you're incompetent, that the company needs new leadership. Lightning struck close enough that Mara felt the electricity in her teeth. Thunder followed instantly, no gap, meaning the bolt had been right on top of them. The helicopter's instruments flickered, and for one heart-stopping moment, everything went dark. Then they came back online. "Jesus Christ," Mara whispered. "We're okay." Jack's voice stayed level. "Faraday cage effect. The airframe protects us. Probably." "Probably." "I'm a pilot, not an electrical engineer." He shot her a quick glance, and his eyes held something that might have been humor if they weren't currently risking death. "But we're still flying, so I'm calling it a win." Mara's phone buzzed in her pocket. Signal was back, which meant they were close enough to the mainland for cell towers to reach them. She pulled it out with shaking hands. 7 missed calls, 12 texts, all from numbers she recognized, board members, executives, her lawyer. The most recent text was from Gerald Yun, time-stamped 3 minutes ago. "Where are you?" Colin says, "You've abandoned critical meetings. Board is concerned. Need immediate response. Her blood turned to ice. He's already moving. He's telling the board I'm AWOL. What time is it? Jack asked. Mara checked. 7:43 p.m. Board meetings at 8 a.m. tomorrow. That gives us... Jack did the math while fighting a gust that tried to spin them. 12 hours. Minus flight time, minus whatever trap Colin has waiting at the tower. We're looking at maybe 6 hours to build a defense. 6 hours to prove my assistant has been sabotaging me for 2 years. Mara's laugh was sharp and desperate. That's impossible. Not if he incriminates himself. Something in Jack's tone made Mara look at him. Really look. His expression had shifted into something cold and tactical, and she recognized it from the military photo in his file, the face of a man who'd planned impossible rescues in hostile territory. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking Colin made a mistake when he threatened Naya's trust fund." Jack adjusted their altitude, taking them lower to escape the worst of the turbulence. "He didn't just threaten my daughter. He gave me proof of his intent. That voicemail is evidence of extortion. It's also vague enough that a good lawyer could argue it was just friendly advice. Which is why we need more." Jack's jaw set. "We need him to expose himself. Fully. Undeniably. In a way that even the board can't ignore." The helicopter shook as another gust hit them. Mara grabbed the door handle knuckles white and forced herself to focus through the fear. How? By giving him exactly what he wants. Jack's eyes flicked to the GPS calculating distance and time. Or making him think we're giving it to him. Colin expects you to miss tomorrow's meeting. He expects you to be rattled defensive scrambling. So we do the opposite. The opposite of scrambling is attacking. Jack's smile was sharp enough to cut. We make him play defense, force his hand, get him to reveal his endgame before he's ready. Mara's mind spun through possibilities. The board meeting. If I show up prepared with Sato's endorsement, Colin's narrative falls apart. Unless he has a backup plan. Jack glanced at her. Does he have a backup plan? The question hung in the cockpit like a live wire. Mara thought about Colin's meticulous nature, his Harvard education, the way he always seemed 3 steps ahead. Yes, he always has a backup plan. Then we need to figure out what it is before we land. The storm intensified. Rain hammered the windscreen so hard the wipers couldn't keep up. Visibility dropped to nothing. Jack was flying on instruments alone, trusting the GPS and his instincts to keep them from slamming into the ocean that churned somewhere below. Mara pulled up her email, scrolling through Colin's messages from the past month. Professionally friendly, subtly undermining, always positioning himself as the voice of reason while making her look uncertain. Then she saw it. An email chain she wasn't supposed to see forwarded to her by mistake, probably meant for Colin's personal account. The subject line read, "Transition Planning. Confidential." Her hands started shaking. "What is it?" Jack asked, reading her body language. "He's been meeting with the board, privately, for weeks." Mara's voice came out strangled. "They've been discussing leadership transition strategies, contingency plans for if I'm removed." "Who's on the email chain?" "Gerald Yoon, Patricia Chen, Marcus Webb." She stopped. "Wait. Marcus Webb." "My co-pilot was named Marcus Webb," Jack said quietly. "Different person. This Marcus is on the board. But..." Mara scrolled further, her pulse pounding. "He joined the board 6 months ago. Colin recommended him. Said we needed fresh perspective from the tech sector." Jack's expression darkened. "Colin placed his own person on the board. Which means he has a guaranteed vote when it comes to removing me." The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that made Mara want to vomit. He's been planning this for at least 6 months, maybe longer. The Morita deal wasn't just an opportunity, it was the trigger. He knew I'd struggle with it, knew I'd make mistakes, so he made sure those mistakes looked worse than they were. "The unauthorized concessions," Jack said, "which made Morita suspicious, which justified moving the board meeting up, which puts me in crisis mode right when Colin needs me to look incompetent. Mara's mind raced. It's elegant, brutal but elegant. Lightning struck again. Closer this time. The helicopter's instruments screamed warnings, and Jack fought the controls as the aircraft tried to spin. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice tight. "Just one." Mara's attempt at humor fell flat. "The storm's tracking faster than forecast. We're flying straight into the worst of it, and I can't find another corridor." Jack's eyes scanned the instruments, looking for options that weren't there. "We can turn back, wait it out on the island until morning. Which means I miss the board meeting and Colin wins by default." Mara shook her head. "No, we go through. Through this, Mara, I'm good, but I'm not magic. The crosswinds are hitting 40 knots. Wind shear is off the charts. One wrong move, and we're in the ocean." "You said everything's a combat mission." Mara met his eyes. "You said it's about what you're fighting for. Well, I'm fighting for 500 families. You're fighting for Nia's future. That's worth the risk." Jack stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Decision made, commitment absolute. "Okay," he said. "But we do this my way. There's one option, it's dangerous. It's probably stupid, but it might work." "Tell me." "The jet stream. There's a fast-moving current at higher altitude. If I can get us into it, we can use the tailwind to cut our flight time almost in half. Get you back to the city with time to prepare." "What's the catch?" Jack's hands tightened on the controls. "The catch is getting into the jet stream means climbing through the worst part of this storm. And once we're in it, we're committed. Can't change course, can't slow down. It's like riding a river rapid. You point yourself downstream and hold on." The helicopter bucked. Alarms wailed. Through the windscreen, Mara could see nothing but chaos. "Do it," she said. "You sure?" "I'm sure I trust you more than I trust the alternative." Mara forced herself to breathe. "Get us home, Jack." He nodded once. Then his hands moved and the helicopter climbed. The turbulence was immediate and vicious. The aircraft shook so hard Mara's teeth rattled. Her stomach lurched as they dropped. Climbed, dropped again in rapid succession. The altimeter spun wildly. The artificial horizon tilted at impossible angles. Jack's voice cut through the chaos, calm and precise. "Look at me." Mara tore her eyes from the nightmare outside and focused on his face. "I've got you," Jack said. "I've done this before. Kabul to Kandahar in a sandstorm that grounded everything else on the base. This is the same thing. Weather's just weather. You ride it, you don't fight it. And if you're wrong, then Nia gets her trust fund, and you get a Viking funeral." His mouth quirked. "But I'm not wrong." The helicopter climbed higher. The turbulence grew worse. Then suddenly, like passing through a membrane, everything changed. The shaking stopped. The wind that had been trying to kill them was now pushing them forward fast and smooth. The helicopter's speed jumped from 90 knots to 140 in seconds. Jack exhaled slowly. "We're in. Jetstream's got us." Mara looked out the window. Below them, the storm still raged, but they were above it now, skimming along the top of the cloud layer like a stone across water. The moon was out up here, bright and cold and indifferent. "How much time did we buy?" she asked. Jack checked the GPS. "At this speed, we'll be back in Manhattan by 9 p.m. Gives you almost 11 hours to prepare for the board meeting. 11 hours to dismantle 2 years of sabotage. 11 hours to set a trap." Jack glanced at her. "You asked how we make Colin incriminate himself. I've been thinking about that. He threatened Nia's trust fund, which means he knows about it, which means he's been monitoring your communications." "How?" Mara's blood ran cold. "My email, my phone. He has admin access to the company systems. He could have installed monitoring software. Which means everything you've sent or received, he's seen." Jack's tactical mind was working through the implications. Every conversation with your lawyer about the trust, every email to Sato, every text about the deal. He's been reading it all. "Which is illegal," Mara said. Corporate espionage. Breach of fiduciary duty. If we can prove it, we need him to prove it himself. Jack's eyes gleamed with something that looked like anticipation. We need to catch him in the act. Make him access the files in a way that creates a digital trail even he can't erase. How? By giving him something he can't resist looking at. Jack pulled out his phone, thumbed through to the recording of Colin's voicemail. I've got his threat recorded. If we can get him to elaborate, to dig deeper, to access protected files in a panic, we'll have him. Mara's mind raced ahead. We send an email. Something that looks like panic. Like I'm trying to hide evidence of incompetence. He monitors it, sees me frantically moving files, thinks I'm spiraling. And he accesses those files to see what you're hiding. Jack finished. If we set up a honeypot folder with tracking software, we'll know exactly when he accesses it. Full digital forensics trail. I know someone. Mara pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts. My college roommate. She works in cybersecurity. If anyone can set up a honeypot that'll hold up in court, it's her. She dialed. The call connected after 2 rings. Mara. It's almost 8 p.m. This better be. Rachel, I need your help. Now, tonight. I have about 10 hours to catch a corporate saboteur and I need forensic-grade evidence. Silence on the line. Then, I'm listening. Mara laid out the situation in rapid-fire sentences: Colin's betrayal, the board coup, the need to prove unauthorized access. Rachel listened without interruption, and when Mara finished, the response was immediate. I can do it, but I need remote access to your company servers, and I need it now. Can you authorize that? Mara looked at Jack. He nodded. You're authorized, Mara said. I'm the CEO. What I say goes. For now, Rachel's voice was dry. Okay, I'm setting up the honeypot. I'll need you to create a folder called something innocuous, quarterly projections, board presentation drafts, whatever. Put some real files in there, nothing classified but valuable enough that Colin will want to see them. I'll embed tracking code that logs every access with timestamp, IP address, and user credentials. How long will it take? Give me 20 minutes. I'll text you when it's live. Rachel paused. Mara, if this guy's as smart as you say, he'll know to cover his tracks. That's what I'm counting on. Mara's smile was sharp. Smart people get cocky. Cocky people make mistakes. She hung up and looked at Jack. 20 minutes. Then we've got 20 minutes to figure out how to bait the trap. Jack's expression was thoughtful. What would make Colin panic enough to access your files immediately? Mara thought about Colin's ambition. His carefully constructed plans, the way he needed control. Evidence that I'm planning to fire him. If he thinks I'm onto him, that I'm building a case. He'll want to know how much you know. Jack nodded. So we send an email. Make it look like you're documenting everything. Maybe copy your lawyer, make it official. Colin sees it in your outbox, assumes you're about to blow up his coup. And he accesses my files to find out exactly what evidence I have. Mara's pulse quickened. Which triggers Rachel's tracking software. We get proof of unauthorized access and... The helicopter lurched violently. Warning lights exploded across the instrument panel. A shrieking alarm filled the cockpit. Jack's hands flew across the controls. Shit! What is it? Mara's voice came out strangled. Hydraulic pressures dropping. Port systems failing. Jack's calm had fractured, replaced with focused urgency. Must have taken damage from that lightning strike. The backup system's compensating, but... The helicopter bucked again, harder this time. Mara felt the difference, the controls responding sluggishly. The aircraft's movements becoming less precise. Can we make it to the city? She asked. Jack's jaw clenched. We can make it somewhere. Question is where? He pulled up the navigation display, scanning for emergency landing sites. The coast was visible ahead, lights twinkling in the darkness. But between them and Manhattan lay miles of water, and the helicopter was wounded. There. Jack pointed to a marker on the screen. Small municipal airport in Jersey, 20 miles out. We can set down there, get the hydraulics checked. No, Mara shook her head. We don't have time. Every minute we're delayed is a minute Colin uses to strengthen his position. Mara, if the hydraulics fail completely, we crash. Then don't let them fail. She met his eyes. You said you've flown wounded birds before. Kabul to Kandahar. You can do this. For a moment, Jack didn't respond. His hands worked the controls, feeling the aircraft's responses, calculating risks that would make a sane person turn back. Then he smiled, a quick, fierce expression that reminded Mara of the combat pilot in that old photograph. Okay, he said, but you're buying me a drink when this is over. I'll buy you a whole damn bar. Jack adjusted their heading, compensating for the failing hydraulics with manual control inputs. The helicopter responded grudgingly, and they continued toward Manhattan. The lights grew closer. Mara could make out individual buildings now, the familiar skyline that meant home and war, and everything she was fighting for. Her phone buzzed. Text from Rachel Honeypot is live. Folder name is Board Strategy Confidential. I seeded it with some juicy-looking fake documents. Anyone who accesses it gets logged with full forensics. Also, I installed a packet sniffer on your network. If Colin tries to delete evidence, we'll catch that too. Good hunting. Mara showed Jack the text. We're armed. Then let's set the trap. Jack's eyes never left the instruments, but his voice carried grim satisfaction. Send the email. Make it good. Mara's fingers moved across her phone screen, composing the most important email of her career. She addressed it to her lawyer, CC'd her CFO, and made sure it would ping Colin's monitoring software like a dinner bell. Subject urgent. Personnel action required. David, I need you to begin building a case for immediate termination of Colin Voss, executive assistant. I have reason to believe he has been engaging in activities detrimental to the company, including unauthorized communications with board members and possible corporate espionage. All evidence is documented in the attached folder. Please review and advise on legal approach. This is time sensitive. I want him out before tomorrow's board meeting. Mara. She attached the Honeypot folder link and hit send. The email disappeared into the digital ether. Somewhere in Manhattan, Colin Voss's monitoring software would flag it. He'd see the subject line. He'd see the accusation. And if he was smart, which he was, he'd know he had minutes to find out how much Mara actually knew. Now we wait, Jack said. The helicopter descended toward the city, hydraulics groaning with every movement. The Ellington Dynamics Tower was visible now, its distinctive profile rising above the surrounding buildings. Mara's phone buzzed. Text from Rachel Bingo. Someone just accessed the Honeypot. User credentials, C. Voss. IP traces to your corporate network. He's in the folder right now. Mara's heart hammered. He took the bait. Is he downloading files? Jack asked. Another text. He's not just downloading. He's trying to delete server logs. Classic panic move. My packet sniffer is recording everything. This idiot is gift wrapping his own conviction. We've got him, Mara breathed. Rachel's capturing everything, even if he tries to cover his tracks. The evidence is already archived. Jack's smile was razor sharp. Your move, Colin. The helicopter banked toward the Ellington Tower. The rooftop helipad was lit up waiting. Jack brought them in on a careful approach, fighting the damaged hydraulics with every foot of descent. This is going to be rough, he warned. Brace yourself. Mara gripped the seat as Jack flared the helicopter, bleeding off speed. The skids touched concrete with a jolt that rattled her teeth, bounced once, settled hard. The rotors wound down. They'd made it. Jack shut down the systems with practiced efficiency, then pulled off his headset and looked at Mara. You've got your evidence. You've got Sato's endorsement. You've got 11 hours until the board meeting. What's your play? Mara's mind was already moving pieces, falling into place like a chess endgame. I don't wait for the board meeting. I call an emergency session. Tonight. Right now. Get everyone in the boardroom before Colin can regroup. He'll know it's a trap. I'm counting on it. Mara climbed out of the helicopter, legs unsteady on solid ground. Colin's greatest weakness is his arrogance. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. So we let him walk into that boardroom thinking he's about to win, and then we destroy him with his own evidence. Jack followed her out, moving with the careful precision of someone whose body had just endured serious stress. What do you need from me? Can you access the company's network? Get into the server room if needed. I'm a janitor. Jack's smile was cold. I have keys to everything. They moved toward the stairwell, and Mara pulled out her phone, dialing Gerald Yoon's number. He answered on the second ring, voice tight with irritation. Mara, where the hell have you been? Colin said. Colin's been lying to you. Mara's voice cut like ice. I need an emergency board session. Tonight. 1 hour from now. Non-negotiable. That's impossible. It's 9 p.m. The board members are... Tell them it's regarding criminal corporate espionage and attempted coup. Tell them if they're not in that boardroom in 1 hour, they're going to miss the most important vote in this company's history. Mara reached the stairwell door, Jack holding it open for her. I have proof, Gerald. Irrefutable proof. And if you're smart, you'll make sure every board member sees it before Colin has a chance to destroy more evidence. Silence on the line. Then, 1 hour. I'll make the calls. Mara hung up and looked at Jack. We're committed now. We were committed the moment you made that bet on the rooftop. Jack's eyes held something warm beneath the tactical calculation. For what it's worth, I'm glad you did. They descended into the building, and Mara felt the weight of what was coming settle on her shoulders like a familiar coat. Somewhere in this tower, Colin was panicking, deleting files, trying to salvage his coup. He didn't know he'd already lost. Mara's phone buzzed one more time. Text from Colin. We need to talk. Urgent. My office. Now. She showed it to Jack. He's trying to feel out how much you know, Jack said. Standard interrogation technique. Act concerned, pretend to want to help extract information. Should I go? Absolutely. Jack's smile was predatory. But not alone. I'll be in the walls, literally. The ventilation system connects to every office. I can hear everything and I can record it. You're going to spy on my meeting with Colin through the air vents. I'm a janitor who used to jump out of helicopters into war zones. Jack's expression was absolutely serious. Climbing through vents is basically retirement for me. Despite everything, Mara laughed. It came out slightly hysterical, pressure releasing like steam from a valve. They reached the executive floor. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Colin's office door was closed, light visible underneath. Jack squeezed her shoulder once. 45 minutes until the board meeting. Get him talking. I'll get everything on record. Then he disappeared down a maintenance corridor, moving like smoke. Mara straightened her blazer, ran a hand through her still damp hair, and knocked on Colin's door. Come in. She opened the door. Colin was behind his desk, looking perfectly composed despite the late hour. His tie was still knotted, his shirt still crisp, his blonde hair still perfectly styled. Only his eyes betrayed him, sharp and calculating, measuring her like a threat. Mara. He stood, gesture of concern, perfectly calibrated. Thank God. I've been worried sick. When you disappeared without telling anyone. I went to see Hideo Sato, Mara said flatly. I got his endorsement for the Morita deal. Original terms. No concessions. Colin's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. That's wonderful news. But Mara, taking off in a helicopter during a storm without informing anyone, the board was concerned about your judgment. Were they? Or were you concerned about your timeline? I don't know what you mean. Mara closed the door behind her and stepped into the office. I think you do. I think you know exactly what I mean. The question is whether you're smart enough to stop before you make this worse. Colin's expression shifted, concern morphing into something cooler, more dangerous. You're upset, understandably. The stress of the Morita deal, the board pressure, it's a lot. Maybe you should take some time. Let me handle tomorrow's presentation. Like you handled the unauthorized concessions. Mara's voice was steel. Like you've been handling private meetings with board members. Like you've been monitoring my corporate communications without authorization. The room went very quiet. Colin's mask slipped just for a second, and Mara saw the calculation behind it. How much did she know? How much was bluff? Could he still salvage this? Those are serious accusations, he said carefully, with serious evidence to back them up. Mara pulled out her phone, showing him the screen. Funny thing about honeypot folders, Colin. They look real, but they're traps, and you walked right into it. His face went pale. 9:17 p.m., Mara read from Rachel's text. User C. Voss accessed confidential board strategy files without authorization. Then attempted to delete server logs to cover the access. Unfortunately for you, every action was recorded by forensic software. IP address, user credentials, deleted files, all archived in a system you didn't even know existed. Colin's jaw clenched. You can't prove. I can prove everything. Mara stepped closer. I can prove you've been planning a coup for months. I can prove you placed your own person on the board. I can prove you sabotaged the Merita deal with unauthorized concessions designed to make me look incompetent. And I can prove you threatened the trust fund of an 8-year-old girl to keep her father quiet. That voicemail was friendly advice. That voicemail was extortion, and it's been saved in 3 separate cloud servers along with expert legal analysis of why it constitutes criminal behavior. Mara's smile was cold enough to freeze. You're done, Colin. The only question is whether you resign quietly or get destroyed publicly. Colin stared at her for a long moment. Then, something in his expression changed, the professional mask shattering, completely revealing the ambition and rage beneath. You self-righteous bitch, he said quietly. You have no idea what you're doing. This company was dying under your leadership. The board knows it. The shareholders know it. I was trying to save it. By destroying me. By replacing you with someone competent. His voice rose. You're a legacy hire playing at CEO. Your father built this company, but you're just a placeholder keeping his seat warm. I have the education, the experience, the vision to actually grow Ellington Dynamics into something that matters. And all it cost was stabbing me in the back for 2 years. It's not personal. Colin's smile was sharp and ugly. It's business. You'd understand that if you were actually qualified for your job. Above them in the ventilation shaft, Jack's phone recorded every word. Mara felt something cold and certain settle in her chest. The board meeting starts in 40 minutes. I suggest you be there, because when I play that recording of you confessing to corporate espionage and attempted coup, I want you to see every single board member's face when they realize what you are. She turned toward the door. They won't believe you, Colin called after her. I've spent 2 years building relationships with them. They trust me. They'll think you faked the evidence out of desperation. Then they'll learn better. Mara opened the door. See you in the boardroom, Colin. She walked out, heart-pounding hands shaking with adrenaline, and didn't look back. In the hallway, Jack emerged from a maintenance door, phone in hand. Got it all. Good. Mara checked her watch. 38 minutes. We need to set up this boardroom, get the evidence loaded, make sure Rachel's ready to present the forensics. Mara! Jack caught her arm. Breathe. She realized she was hyperventilating. I'm fine. You're running on adrenaline and rage. Both useful, but you need to center before you walk into that room. His eyes were steady, calm, grounding. You've already won. The evidence is ironclad. Colin's confession is recorded. All you have to do now is show up and let the truth speak for itself. Mara took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. You're right. I'm usually right about tactical operations. Jack's smile was quick. It's personal stuff I'm terrible at. Despite everything, Mara laughed. Thank you. For all of this. For flying me through the storm, for helping me trap Colin, for... For doing my job. Jack's expression softened. That trust fund for Nia is the most generous thing anyone's ever done for us. This is me paying it forward. Or back. Or whatever the appropriate direction is. Mara's phone buzzed. Text from Gerald Board is assembling. Colin looks confident. What do you have? She texted back. Everything. Then she looked at Jack. Ready to watch a coup collapse? Wouldn't miss it. He paused. Though technically I should probably wait outside. I'm still just the janitor. Screw that. Mara's smile was fierce. You're my pilot, my tactical advisor, and the man who saved this company. You're coming in. They walked toward the boardroom together, and with every step, Mara felt the weight of her father's legacy settle on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as armor. She was about to fight for everything he'd built, everything 500 families depended on, and she was armed with truth. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Inside, Colin waited with his lies, and his ambition, and his certainty that he'd already won. He had no idea what was about to hit him. Mara pushed open the doors and walked into war. The boardroom was a cathedral of power and mahogany, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering sprawl. 7 board members sat around the table, faces ranging from concerned to hostile. And at the far end, Colin Voss occupied the seat that should have been Mara's, a subtle power play that spoke volumes. He stood when she entered, smile perfectly calibrated between relief and concern. Mara, thank God. We were worried. Sit down, Colin. Mara's voice cut through the pleasantries like a scalpel. She moved to the head of the table, Jack, a silent presence behind her. This meeting is about to get very uncomfortable for you. Gerald Yoon cleared his throat. Mara, while we're glad you're safe, you need to understand the position you've put us in. Disappearing during a critical deal negotiation, taking company assets without authorization. I took our helicopter to Sato's Island compound to save the Morita deal that Colin sabotaged. Mara set her phone on the table, connected it to the boardroom's presentation system. And before anyone asks, yes, I have Sato's full endorsement. The deal proceeds on original terms, no concessions. Patricia Chen, the board's legal counsel, leaned forward. That's excellent news, but it doesn't address the procedural concerns. The procedural concerns are the least of our problems. Mara pulled up the first slide, a timeline of Colin's activities over the past 6 months. What we need to address is the corporate espionage that's been happening under our noses for 2 years. Colin's expression remained carefully neutral, but Mara saw his hands clench beneath the table. Marcus Webb. Colin's plant on the board spoke up. That's a serious accusation. Do you have evidence, or is this a deflection tactic? I have evidence that would stand up in criminal court. Mara advanced the slide. Let's start with the unauthorized concessions offered to Morita Group. Colin, you want to explain why you offered terms I never approved. I was trying to save a failing negotiation. Colin's voice was smooth, practiced. You were distracted, unavailable. Someone had to make a decision. Someone without authority to do so. Mara pulled up email records. These communications show you bypassing me entirely, negotiating directly with Akiro's team. That's not initiative. That's insubordination. In service of the company's best interests. In service of making me look incompetent so the board would remove me. Mara's eyes swept the room. Which brings us to the private meetings. Colin's been holding regular sessions with several of you discussing leadership transition strategies. Want to tell everyone what those strategies involved? The room went very quiet. Gerald's face had paled. Colin said those were informal advisory sessions. Did he also mention he placed his own candidate on this board? Mara pointed to Marcus Webb. Mr. Webb joined 6 months ago on Colin's recommendation. Convenient timing, given that a no-confidence vote requires a simple majority, and Colin needed 1 guaranteed vote in his pocket. Marcus Webb stood abruptly. I resent the implication. Then you'll love the evidence. Mara pulled up financial records. Your consulting firm received a $200,000 advisory fee from an offshore account registered to Colin's wife's maiden name. 3 days before you were nominated to the board. Want to explain that transaction?" Webb's face went ashen. Colin's mask was cracking now, fury bleeding through the professional facade. "You're grasping at straws. None of this proves." "Sit down, Mr. Webb." Gerald's voice had turned to iron. "Colin, I suggest you let Ms. Ellington finish." Mara advanced to the next slide, server logs time-stamped and damning. At 9:17 p.m. tonight, user C. Voss accessed confidential board strategy files without authorization. He then attempted to delete server logs to cover his tracks. Unfortunately for him, every action was captured by forensic monitoring software installed by a cybersecurity expert. She pulled up the packet sniffer data lines of code scrolling across the screen. To most of the board it was gibberish, but Patricia Chen's eyes widened. "Those are deletion commands," Patricia said slowly. "He was purging evidence. Not just evidence. He was purging an entire hidden archive." Mara felt savage satisfaction as Colin's expression finally broke. "Tell them about K-Arch Colin. The folder you've been maintaining for 2 years documenting every mistake I made, every delayed decision, every project that went over budget. Building your case for why the board should replace me with you." "That's standard executive documentation," Colin started. "Standard documentation doesn't live on a ghost server hidden from IT audits." Mara pulled up network architecture diagrams. "You set up an entire parallel system to avoid detection, except you made one critical mistake." She paused, letting the tension build. "You assumed the janitor couldn't access it." Jack stepped forward, and every eye in the room turned to him. He set a tablet on the table screen, displaying administrative credentials and system access logs. "Master key gets you into every room," Jack said quietly. "Admin override gets you into every system. Turns out being invisible has advantages." Colin's face had gone from pale to red. "You let the custodial staff hack our servers. That's a security breach." "I authorized it." Mara's voice was steel. "Mr. Rourke is a decorated combat veteran with security clearances higher than anyone in this room. He's also a better judge of character than I've been, which is why he recognized your threat for what it was." She played Colin's voicemail, the one where he'd threatened Nia's trust fund. His smooth voice filled the boardroom, every word dripping with implied menace. "That's extortion," Patricia said flatly. "Criminal extortion of a minor's educational trust." "It's also just the beginning." Jack pulled up network traffic logs. "While Colin was trying to delete evidence, I set up a packet sniffer on the corporate network. Every deletion attempt, every file access, every command he entered, all recorded, including this." The screen filled with command lines showing Colin attempting to purge not just his hidden archive, but emails, financial records, and communications with board members. The timestamps were damning, all within the last hour, all panicked attempts at damage control. Gerald Yoon's hands were shaking. "Colin, tell me this isn't what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like." Mara's voice was calm now, the fury burned down to cold certainty. "Colin Voss has been running a 2-year operation to undermine my leadership, sabotage critical deals, and position himself as my replacement. He corrupted our board with a paid plant, conducted corporate espionage, and threatened an innocent child to maintain his cover. The only question is whether we handle this internally or bring in the authorities." Colin shot to his feet, chair scraping back. "You self-righteous hypocrite. You have no idea what you're doing. This company needs real leadership, not some legacy hire playing at being CEO." "That's enough." Gerald's voice cracked like a whip. "Security, please escort Mr. Voss from the building, immediately." 2 security guards appeared at the door they'd been waiting outside, called by Gerald during Mara's presentation. Jack must have coordinated it, Mara realized. Always 3 steps ahead. "You can't do this," Colin snarled. "I have contracts, severance agreements." "You had contracts," Patricia corrected. Termination for cause voids all of them. You'll be lucky if we don't press criminal charges. Colin looked around the room, searching for allies. Marcus Webb wouldn't meet his eyes. The other board members had expressions ranging from shock to disgust. This is a mistake, Colin said, his voice desperate now. Mara can't run this company. She's weak and decisive. The Marita deal is proof. She needed a janitor to fly her to a meeting because she couldn't organize proper transportation. She needed a pilot, Jack interrupted quietly. There's a difference, and for the record, she organized just fine. Chartered a helicopter, negotiated terms, flew through a storm that grounded commercial aircraft, secured the deal, and came back to dismantle your coup in less than 12 hours. That's not weakness. That's competence you were too arrogant to recognize. The words hit Colin like a physical blow, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. You're nobody, he spat at Jack. A washed-up soldier cleaning toilets for minimum wage. You don't belong in this room. And yet he's the one who caught you. Mara stepped between them, protecting Jack from Colin's venom. Which says more about you than it does about him. Security, get him out. The guards moved forward. Colin jerked away from their reaching hands, straightening his tie with shaking fingers. This isn't over, he said, looking directly at Mara. I'll sue. I'll go to the media. I'll burn this company to the ground before I let you try it. Mara's smile was cold. Every piece of evidence we have is backed up in 3 separate secure servers. You go public, we release everything: the bribes, the espionage, the extortion. Your career in corporate America will be over before lunch. Colin's mouth opened, closed. He looked around the room one more time, seeing only closed faces and shattered alliances. Then he turned and walked out, the security guards flanking him like pallbearers. The door closed. The boardroom exhaled collectively. Gerald dropped his head into his hands. Jesus Christ! 2 years! He was sabotaging us for 2 years and we never saw it. He was good at his job. Mara's voice was flat. Unfortunately, his job was destroying mine. Marcus Webb needs to resign immediately, Patricia said. And we need to audit every decision made in the last 6 months. If Colin corrupted one board member, there might be others. There aren't. Mara pulled up financial records. I had Rachel, my cybersecurity expert, run a complete audit. Webb was the only one receiving payments. The rest of you were manipulated, not bought. The distinction seemed to provide small comfort. Helen Rodriguez, the oldest board member, spoke for the first time. Mara, I owe you an apology. We all do. We should have seen this, should have questioned Colin's influence. You trusted him. Mara's anger was fading, replaced by exhaustion. He was charming, competent, always available. That's how manipulation works. It looks like help until you realize it's control. What happens now? Gerald asked. Mara took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Now we vote. Colin manufactured a crisis to force a no-confidence vote against me. So let's have it. Let's find out if the board actually wants new leadership, or if they were just following Colin's script. The room went very still. Mara, Helen said gently. After what you've just shown us, there's no question. I want the vote. Mara's voice was firm. Because if I'm going to lead this company forward, I need to know I have the board's real support. Not just default acceptance, because the alternative was a criminal. Gerald looked around the table. All in favor of maintaining Mara Ellington as CEO of Ellington Dynamics. 7 hands rose. Marcus Webb's seat sat empty, his vote void. Unanimous. Mara felt something crack open in her chest, relief mixed with something deeper, something that felt almost like redemption. Thank you, she said quietly, then stronger. The Marita deal closes next week. Hideo Sato's endorsement is ironclad, but I'm not interested in just closing deals anymore. I'm interested in building the company my father envisioned, one that values people over profit, that sees talent regardless of where it comes from, that protects its workers instead of exploiting them. She glanced at Jack, still standing quietly behind her. Which brings me to my first major initiative. I'm establishing a human potential department. Its job will be to identify talent within our organization, people working in positions beneath their capabilities, people with skills. We're not utilizing people who've been invisible because they don't have the right degrees or the right connections. We're going to build an internal talent pipeline that promotes from within and invests in our people's futures. Patricia was nodding slowly. That's actually brilliant. The best candidates are often already in the building. We just don't see them because we're looking at resumes instead of results. Mara felt energy returning, purpose clarifying. I want to implement this within the month. Full training programs, educational subsidies, mentorship tracks. If someone has the ability, we're going to give them the opportunity. That's going to be expensive, Gerald warned. Less expensive than the turnover we've been experiencing. Less expensive than hiring external consultants who don't understand our culture. Less expensive than letting talent walk out the door because we didn't recognize it. Mara pulled up financial projections. I ran the numbers. With the Morita partnership revenue, we can fully fund this initiative and still hit our growth targets. Helen smiled. Your father would be proud. The words hit Mara harder than she expected. Her throat tightened. I hope so. He would be. Gerald's voice was warm. You just saved this company twice in one night, once from a bad deal, once from a traitor. And instead of resting on that victory, you're already thinking about how to make us better. That's leadership. The meeting continued for another hour. Logistics, legalities, damage control strategies. By the time it ended, dawn was breaking over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The board members filed out, leaving Mara alone with Jack. She slumped into a chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. We did it. You did it. Jack leaned against the wall, looking equally drained. I just flew the helicopter and climbed through some vents. You saved my company. You saved your company. I just helped. He checked his watch. It's 6 a.m. Contracts fulfilled. Naya's trust is funded. I should probably... Don't. Mara stood abruptly. Don't resign. Not yet. Jack's eyebrows rose. Mara. I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees through corporate bullshit and tells me the truth. She moved closer. And more than that, I need someone to run the human potential department. Someone who understands what it's like to be invisible, to have skills the world doesn't recognize. Someone who can identify talent in unexpected places. I'm not qualified to run a corporate department. You're a decorated combat veteran with leadership experience in the most high-pressure situations imaginable. You just orchestrated the exposure of a corporate coup using nothing but a master key and tactical thinking. You're more qualified than half the executives in this building. Mara held his gaze. And Nia's trust is already funded. This isn't part of our contract. This is me asking you to consider a future that's more than cleaning floors. Jack was quiet for a long moment. I stopped flying because people died when I flew. This isn't flying. This is building. This is protecting people by giving them opportunities instead of extracting them from war zones. Mara's voice softened. Marcus Webb told you talent doesn't belong in certain rooms. Prove him wrong. Show him. Show everyone that a janitor can become an executive because the uniform never mattered. Only the person wearing it. Something shifted in Jack's expression. What would Nia think? I think she'd be proud her father is fixing things on a bigger scale. Mara smiled. You told me she got an A on her science project. Good hands like an engineer, her teacher said. Imagine what she'll do when she grows up, seeing her father recognized for his real worth instead of hidden behind a gray coverall. Jack exhaled slowly. I'd need time to think about it, to talk to Nia. Take all the time you need. Mara pulled out her phone. But while you're thinking, let me show you something. She pulled up the company directory, scrolled to the facilities department. There's a woman in janitorial named Sarah Chen. She has a PhD in environmental engineering from MIT. Works night shift cleaning labs because her student visa expired and she couldn't find sponsorship for a professional position. She's been submitting suggestions for our waste management system, brilliant stuff, but they get ignored because they come from custodial staff. Jack's eyes narrowed. You're saying she's invisible? I'm saying she's the first person the Human Potential Department should interview. Mara scrolled further. There's also Marcus. Marcus works in the mailroom. Former Navy logistics specialist. Can organize anything. Gets paid minimum wage to sort mail when he should be running our supply chain. And Teresa in the cafeteria, former VP of marketing who took time off to raise kids and couldn't get back into corporate America because of the resume gap. Now she serves lunch and watches people half as qualified make decisions she could do better in her sleep. Jack's expression had gone thoughtful. How many? At least 30 people I've identified. Probably more I haven't noticed yet because I haven't been looking. Mara met his eyes. That's what the Human Potential Department does. It looks, it sees, it recognizes. And I'd be running it. If you want the job. Mara paused. Fair warning, it comes with an office, a salary about 8 times what you're making now, and the expectation that you'll make board members uncomfortable by promoting people they think don't belong. Think you can handle that? Jack's smile was slow and genuine. I've made generals uncomfortable. Board members should be easy. Is that a yes? That's a, let me talk to my daughter and get back to you by Monday. Jack pushed off the wall. But between us, yeah, it's probably a yes. Relief flooded through Mara. Good, because I really don't want to start looking for another person I trust. Speaking of trust, Jack pulled out his phone. I need to make sure Collins actually left the building. Guy like that, ego that big, he might try something stupid on his way out. As if summoned by the mention, Mara's phone buzzed. Text from building security. Colin Voss attempted to access server room. Denied entry. He's demanding to speak with you. Mara showed Jack the text. Apparently something stupid is already in progress. Want me to handle it? Jack offered. No. Mara's jaw set. I'll handle it. He needs to hear it from me. They took the elevator down to the lobby. Colin was there being held by 2 security guards, his perfect hair finally disheveled his tie. Crooked fury radiating from every inch of his body. Mara. His voice was tight. Tell them to let me up. I have personal items in my office, which will be inventoried and shipped to you. Mara's voice was flat. You don't get access to anything in this building, ever again. This is illegal detention. This is private property and you're trespassing. Mara nodded to the guards. Escort him out. If he returns, call the police. Colin jerked free of the guard's grip, straightening his jacket with shaking hands. You're making a mistake. Without me, this company will fail. You'll fail. And when you do, I'll be there to watch it burn. Then you'll be watching from a distance. Mara's expression was stone. Goodbye, Colin. She turned and walked away. Jack beside her and didn't look back as the guards escorted Colin through the lobby doors and out into the cold morning. In the elevator, Jack said quietly, He's going to try something. Men like that don't accept losing. Let him try. Mara felt exhausted, but strangely calm. We have evidence. We have the board's support. We have Sato's endorsement. Whatever Colin does next, we'll handle it. The elevator opened on the executive floor. The building was starting to wake up early shift workers arriving, lights flickering on the day beginning. Mara's office looked the same as when she'd left it yesterday, but everything felt different. The weight on her shoulders had shifted from burden to purpose. Her phone buzzed. Text from Akira Morita. Sato called. He was very impressed. Let's finalize this partnership properly. Dinner next week, Tokyo. Bring your team. Mara smiled and showed Jack the message. Your team, he read. Think that includes the janitor. Includes the future head of Human Potential, Mara corrected. Assuming he takes the job. Assuming. Jack's smile was warm. I should get home. Nia will be waking up soon, and Mrs. Chen needs to get to her own house. Go. Mara walked him to the door. And Jack, thank you. For everything. For flying through the storm, for catching Colin, for seeing me as more than just a legacy hire playing at CEO. You're not playing at anything. Jack's expression was serious. You're the real deal. Colin was right about one thing: this company needs real leadership. He just didn't realize you were already providing it. The words settled over Mara like a benediction. Jack left, and she watched him go. This man who'd been invisible until she'd seen him, this janitor who'd saved her company with nothing but competence and integrity, and a father's desperate love for his daughter. She thought about the bet on the rooftop. Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you. Said as a joke meant to mock, turned into something else entirely. Maybe not marriage, that was absurd. But partnership, trust. The foundation of something that could grow into more. Mara pushed the thought aside. Too much, too fast, too complicated. Her phone rang. Rachel, the cybersecurity expert. Please tell me you destroyed him, Rachel said without preamble. We destroyed him. Mara slumped into her office chair. Your honeypot worked perfectly. Colin's gone, his plant is gone, and I have full board support. And the janitor is probably about to become an executive. Rachel laughed. Only you would turn a corporate coup into a recruitment opportunity. I'm proud of you, Mara. Your dad would be too. The words made Mara's eyes burn. Thanks, Rach. Get some sleep. You sound dead on your feet. Can't. Board presentation in 3 hours. The official one where I present the Marita deal to shareholders. You're insane. Probably. Mara smiled. But I'm also still CEO. She hung up and stared out at the Manhattan skyline, watching the sun climb higher, turning the city to gold. Somewhere down there, 500 employees were starting their day, unaware that their futures had just been secured by a storm flight, a tactical janitor, and a CEO who'd learned to see past uniforms. Somewhere out there, Colin Voss was plotting revenge that would never materialize because his credibility was destroyed. And somewhere in a small apartment in Queens, an 8-year-old girl was waking up to learn that her father had just changed both their lives forever. Mara closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The victory, the exhaustion, the weight of responsibility, and beneath it all, the strange, unexpected warmth of knowing she wasn't alone anymore. She had Jack, not as an employee, not as a contractor, as something better, an ally, a friend, maybe eventually something more. But that was a thought for another day. Today, she had a company to run, a deal to close, and a human potential department to build. Mara Ellington opened her laptop and got to work. The storm had passed. The real building could begin. The shareholder presentation at 3 p.m. should have been terrifying, but after flying through a storm and dismantling a corporate coup in the same night, standing in front of investors felt almost mundane. Mara delivered the Marita partnership announcement with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she'd earned every word. Sato's endorsement letter, read aloud, brought applause. The projected revenue numbers brought more. By the time she finished, the shareholders were standing, and for the first time since her father's death, Mara felt like she actually deserved to be in this room. Gerald found her afterward in the hallway. That was masterful. The board made the right choice keeping you. The board made the only choice. Mara's smile was tired. But thank you. There's one more thing. Gerald's expression turned serious. Marcus Webb resigned this morning. Sent a letter accepting full responsibility for his ethical violations. He's also returning the $200,000. Smart move on his part. His lawyer's move, probably. Gerald paused. We need to fill his board seat. I'd like to nominate someone with operational experience, someone who understands the company from the ground up. Mara knew where this was going. It's too soon. Jack hasn't even officially accepted the human potential position yet. I'm not talking about Jack. though in a year or two he'd be an excellent candidate. Gerald pulled out his tablet, showing her a file. I'm talking about Teresa Molina, your cafeteria worker who used to be a VP of marketing. I did some research. She didn't just take time off for kids, she took time off to care for a dying parent. 7 years of unpaid caregiving that destroyed her career prospects. But her resume before that, impeccable. Harvard MBA, 15 years at Fortune 500 companies, and a reputation for integrity that made her too honest for corporate politics. Mara stared at the file, stared at Drew. You want to put a cafeteria worker on the board. I want to put a brilliant strategist on the board who happens to currently work in the cafeteria. Gerald's smile was knowing. Seems like exactly the kind of move your human potential department would approve of. The audacity of it made Mara laugh. The other board members will lose their minds. Good. They need to lose their minds occasionally. Keeps them sharp. Gerald closed the tablet. Talk to her. If she's interested, I'll sponsor the nomination. He left, and Mara stood in the empty hallway, holding a possibility that felt both insane and perfectly right. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jack. Talked to Nia. She has questions. Can we meet? Your office in 20. Mara's heart kicked up. This was it. The decision that would determine whether the human potential department lived or died before it even launched. She texted back. See you then. 20 minutes later, Jack knocked on her office door. He wasn't alone. Nia Rourke was 8 years old with her father's blue eyes and dark hair pulled into 2 neat braids. She wore a backpack covered in science stickers and carried herself with the careful seriousness of a child who'd grown up too fast. Ms. Ellington, Jack said formally. This is my daughter Nia. She wanted to meet the person offering me a job. Mara came around the desk, crouching to Nia's eye level. It's nice to meet you, Nia. Your dad's told me about your science project. The circuit that worked on the first try. Nia's face lit up. I used copper wire and a 9-volt battery. Ms. Patterson said most kids need 3 or 4 tries, but I tested all the connections first, so I knew it would work. Smart. Mara smiled. Testing before trying. That's good engineering. That's what Daddy says. Nia glanced at her father. He also says you offered him a job where he'd help people like Sarah. Who's Sarah? She's our neighbor. She cleans at Daddy's building at night. She's really smart, but she can't get a better job because of visa stuff. Nia's expression was solemn. Daddy says your new department would help people like her. Is that true? The directness of the question caught Mara off guard. Yes, that's exactly what we'd do. And you'd pay him enough that he doesn't have to work 2 jobs anymore. Mara's throat tightened. She hadn't known Jack was working 2 jobs. Yes, the salary would be enough for 1 job. Nia considered this, her small face serious. Then she looked up at Jack. I think you should take it, Daddy. You're always fixing things for other people. Maybe it's time someone fixed things for you. The simple wisdom of it made Jack's eyes go bright. He put his hand on Nia's shoulder. You sure, baby? It means I'll be in meetings sometimes, working late occasionally. Mrs. Chen says she doesn't mind watching me more. And you'd be home for dinner most nights, right? Right. And you wouldn't be flying into storms anymore. Jack's expression softened. No more storms, I promise. Nia nodded decisively. Then you should do it. Mom would want you to. The mention of Sarah Rourke, Jack's dead wife, hung in the air like a benediction. Jack crouched beside his daughter, pulling her into a hug that looked like it was holding together all the broken pieces of his world. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. I'll do it. Mara had to look away, blinking hard. When she looked back, Jack was standing Nia's hand in his, and the decision was made. When do I start? He asked. Monday. Mara's voice was steady, despite the emotion churning in her chest. We'll announce the Human Potential Department at the company town hall Friday. That gives you the weekend to prepare. What am I preparing for? Changing everything. Mara pulled up the files she'd been compiling. I've identified 32 employees currently working below their capabilities. Some are in facilities like Sarah Chen. Some are in the mailroom, the cafeteria administrative support. All of them have skills we're wasting. Your job is to assess them, create development plans, and find positions where they can actually contribute. Jack scanned the list, his tactical mind already working. This is going to piss off a lot of managers who think their departments are fine. Let them be pissed. We're not here to make them comfortable. We're here to build the company my father envisioned. Mara met his eyes. Think you can handle that? I've handled hostile extraction zones. Corporate managers should be easy. Naya giggled. Daddy makes everything sound like a mission. Everything is a mission, Jack said seriously. The only difference is what you're fighting for. The words echoed what he'd told Mara in the helicopter, and she felt something warm settle in her chest. This was right. This partnership, this initiative, this moment of choosing to see people instead of positions. There's one more thing, Mara said. Gerald wants to nominate Teresa Molina for Marcus Webb's board seat. Former VP of Marketing currently works in the cafeteria. If she accepts, she'd be the first person promoted from hourly to board level in the company's history. Jack's smile was slow and fierce. That's exactly the kind of statement this department should make. I thought you'd approve. Mara glanced at Naya. What do you think? Should we promote people based on what they can do instead of where they've been? Naya nodded vigorously. Ms. Patterson says the best ideas come from people who see things differently. Sarah sees things differently because she works at night when the building's empty. Maybe Ms. Teresa sees things differently too. Out of the mouths of babes, Jack murmured. I'm not a babe, Daddy. I'm 8. Naya's indignation was adorable. Mara laughed, and the sound felt like releasing pressure that had been building for years. You're absolutely right, Nia. And that kind of clear thinking is exactly what we need. They spent another 20 minutes discussing logistics, before Jack and Nia left, hand in hand, father and daughter, walking toward a future neither of them had imagined 48 hours ago. Mara watched them go and felt the weight of what she was building settle on her shoulders, not as burden, but as purpose. Her phone rang. Akira Morita calling from Tokyo. Ms. Ellington? Sato shared his impression of your visit. He used the word authentic, which from him is the highest praise. I'm honored. Mara moved to the window, looking out at the city. I meant everything I said about protecting our people. I believe you, which is why I'm calling to formalize our partnership. The contracts will be ready for signature next week. I'm also inviting you to Tokyo for a celebration dinner. Bring your senior team. I'll be there. Mara paused. Akira, can I ask you something? Off the record. Of course. How did you know Colin's concessions were unauthorized? Akira was quiet for a moment. Because they were too desperate. Real partnership comes from strength, not panic. Colin's offers reeked of someone trying to close a deal before it fell apart. His voice warmed slightly. You, on the other hand, flew through a storm to make your case in person. That's strength. That's someone worth partnering with. The call ended, and Mara stood at the window for a long time, watching the city that had almost destroyed her, instead become the backdrop for her victory. Friday's town hall was standing room only. 500 employees packed the main auditorium, faces ranging from curious to concerned. The rumor mill had been churning all week. Colin's abrupt departure. Marcus Webb's resignation, whispers of major changes coming. Mara stood at the podium, Jack beside her, and felt the weight of every eye in the room. 3 days ago, she began, I almost lost this company. Not to market forces or bad luck, but to sabotage from within. Someone close to me had been undermining our mission, corrupting our board, and positioning himself to take over. The room went silent. That person is gone. But his presence taught me something crucial. I'd been so focused on external threats that I missed the internal rot. And more importantly, I'd been so focused on fighting fires that I missed the talent standing right in front of me. She gestured to Jack. This is Jack Rourke. Until Monday, he was part of our custodial staff. Some of you might have seen him cleaning your offices, emptying your trash, maintaining our facilities. What you didn't know is that Jack is a decorated combat veteran. Para-rescue, 87 missions, 43 lives saved, a man with leadership experience in the most demanding environments imaginable. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't know it either, Mara continued. Because I wasn't looking. I saw a janitor in gray coveralls and assumed that's all he was. I was wrong. And if I was wrong about Jack, how many others am I wrong about? How many of you are working in positions beneath your capabilities because we don't see you? She pulled up a slide, the Human Potential Department logo, clean and professional. Starting Monday, Jack will head our new Human Potential Department. Its mission is simple. Identify talent wherever it exists in this organization and give it the opportunity to grow. We're going to promote from within. We're going to invest in education and training. We're going to build careers, not just fill positions. The murmurs grew louder, excitement mixing with disbelief. I know this sounds radical. I know some of you are thinking it's just corporate propaganda, another initiative that will fade after a few months. Mara's voice hardened. So, let me give you proof. Teresa Molina, please stand up. In the back of the auditorium, a middle-aged Latina woman slowly stood. She looked terrified. Teresa currently works in our cafeteria, Mara said. What most of you don't know is that before she took time off to care for her dying mother, Teresa was a VP of marketing at 3 Fortune 500 companies, Harvard MBA, 15 years of executive experience, and next week, she's being nominated to our board of directors. The auditorium erupted. Teresa's face went from terrified to shocked, tears streaming down her cheeks as the people around her burst into applause. That's what this department does, Mara said over the noise. It sees you. It recognizes you. It gives you the chance you deserve. If you're interested in being assessed for new positions, talk to Jack. If you know someone whose talents are being wasted, refer them. We're building something different here. We're building the company my father always wanted, one that values people over everything else. She stepped back from the podium, and the applause was deafening. Afterward, Jack was mobbed by employees wanting to know more. Mara watched him handle it with the same calm competence he brought to everything. Answering questions, taking names, promising follow-ups. Teresa found Mara in the hallway, still crying. I don't understand. Why me? Because you're brilliant and we've been wasting you. Mara handed her a tissue. The board votes next week. Gerald Yoon is sponsoring your nomination. All you have to do is say yes. I haven't worked at that level in 7 years. You've worked at every level. You understand this company from the bottom up. That makes you more qualified than half the executives who've never left the corner office. Mara's smile was warm. Say yes, Teresa. Teresa wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and nodded. Yes. God help me, yes. The weekend blurred past in a frenzy of preparation. Jack set up his new office smaller than Colin's had been, but with a window that overlooked the city. He spent Saturday interviewing Sarah Chen, who cried when he told her the company would sponsor her visa and create a position in environmental engineering. He spent Sunday with Nia, who insisted on helping him pick out office clothes and lectured him about the importance of looking professional. Monday morning, Jack Rourke walked into Ellington Dynamics wearing a suit instead of coveralls, and the transformation was complete. Mara found him in his office at 8 a.m., staring at his desk like it might bite him. Having second thoughts? She asked, having terror. Jack's smile was sheepish. I've faced enemy fire with less fear than this desk chair. The desk chair can't shoot back. No, but the executives who think I don't belong here can sabotage me professionally. He turned to face her. Colin's gone, but his attitude isn't. There are people in this building who agree with him, who think janitors should stay janitors, and executive positions should only go to people with the right degrees from the right schools. Let them think that. Mara leaned against the doorframe. And then prove them wrong by being so damn good at this job they can't ignore you. No pressure. All the pressure. Her smile turned serious. But you're not alone. You've got me. You've got Gerald. You've got a board that just approved this department unanimously. And you've got 500 employees who are watching to see if this is real or just corporate theater. Make it real, Jack. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then let's start with Sarah. I want her transferred to the engineering department by end of week. Full salary, benefits, visa sponsorship. Let's show people this isn't theoretical. Done. Mara pulled out her phone, texting HR. What else? Marcus in the mailroom. I looked at his Navy logistics record. The man coordinated supply chains for an entire carrier group. We're wasting him on mail delivery. Move him to operations. And I want to start an education fund. Anyone who wants to go back to school, get certifications, improve their credentials, the company covers it. Full tuition books, time off for classes. Mara's smile widened. You're going to bankrupt us. You're going to build loyalty that money can't buy. Jack's expression was fierce. People don't leave companies that invest in them. They don't sabotage leaders who see them. You want to prevent another Colin. Make sure everyone in this building knows they're valued. You're good at this. I'm terrified at this. Same thing. Mara checked her watch. Board meeting in an hour. Teresa's nomination vote. Want to observe? Wouldn't miss it. The vote was unanimous. Teresa Molina became the first hourly employee in company history to join the board of directors, and when Gerald announced it, she stood in the boardroom doorway wearing a suit Mara had helped her pick out, and looked like she might faint from joy. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being worth seeing, Mara replied. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of transformation. Sarah Chen's first engineering proposal saved the company $80,000 in waste management costs. Marcus redesigned the entire supply chain, cutting delivery times by 30%. Teresa's first board meeting contribution was a marketing strategy so brilliant that Akira Morita personally called to say he wanted to implement it in Japan. And the applications to the Human Potential Department flooded in hundreds of employees, requesting assessments, referring colleagues, sharing stories of wasted talent and hidden skills. Jack worked 18-hour days, interviewing, evaluating, placing people in positions where they could finally contribute. He was exhausted, exhilarated, and more alive than he'd been since Marcus Webb died in that helicopter over Afghanistan. Mara watched him transform the company from the ground up and felt something shift in her chest. Something that had started as professional respect and was becoming something dangerously close to more. 6 months after the storm flight, Ellington Dynamics was a different company. The Morita partnership had exceeded every projection. Quarterly earnings were up 40%. Employee retention had hit record highs, and the Human Potential Department had promoted 63 people from hourly to professional positions, with another 100 in training programs. The business press called it a revolution. Fortune magazine ran a cover story, the CEO who promoted her janitor and changed everything. But Colin Voss had one more move left. The article hit Bloomberg on a Tuesday morning. Former executive claims Ellington Dynamics engaged in corporate espionage. Colin had gone to the press with a twisted version of events, claiming Mara had illegally monitored his communications, that Jack had hacked company servers without authorization, that the entire coup exposure was fabricated to cover Mara's incompetence. Mara's phone exploded with calls from board members, investors, journalists demanding comment. She called Jack into her office. He's trying to burn us down. Let him try. Jack pulled up his tablet showing forensic evidence Rachel had compiled. Every piece of evidence we have is backed by legal documentation. Colin's accusations fall apart under scrutiny. Scrutiny takes time. Damage happens immediately. Then we don't wait for scrutiny. Jack's tactical mind was already working. We release everything. Full transparency. The voicemails, the server logs, the financial payments to Marcus Webb Collins' confession recorded in the office. We put it all out there and let the world decide who's telling the truth. Mara's hands shook. That's nuclear. He went nuclear first. We're just returning fire. Jack met her eyes. You taught me something on that rooftop. You said real leadership means protecting your people. Well, Collins attacking our people by attacking this program. So we protect them. We show the world exactly who he is. Mara made the decision in 3 seconds. Do it. Release everything. Rachel coordinated the data dump, a comprehensive website with every piece of evidence organized, footnoted, irrefutable. It went live at noon. By 3 p.m., Collins' accusations had collapsed. By 5 p.m., 3 major publications had retracted his story and issued corrections. By midnight, Collins' lawyer had called begging Mara not to press criminal charges. Tell him, Mara said into the phone, that if he ever mentions this company, me or Jack Rourke again, I will prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law and make sure every corporation in America knows what he did. His choice. The lawyer agreed. Colin Voss disappeared from public life, his reputation destroyed, his career over. The storm had finally passed. That Friday, Mara stood on the rooftop helipad where everything had started 6 months ago. The Bell 429 sat gleaming in the late afternoon sun, and Jack was there running a pre-flight check. Going somewhere? She asked. Just maintenance. Jack straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Making sure she's ready if we need her. Do we need her? Hope not, but I like knowing she's here. He glanced at Mara. Why are you up here? Nostalgia. Mara moved to the edge of the helipad, looking out at the city. 6 months ago, I was standing in this exact spot, making a stupid bet with a janitor. Feels like a lifetime ago. Feels like yesterday. Jack joined her at the railing. You remember what you said? Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you. Mara's smile was rueful. I was mocking you. Being cruel without even realizing it. You were testing me. Jack's voice was soft. You wanted to know if I was who I appeared to be, or if there was more underneath. Turns out there was more underneath both of us. Mara looked at him, really looked. The suit he wore now instead of coveralls. The confidence he carried instead of resignation. The way his eyes had gone from empty to alive. I never apologized, she said quietly, for not seeing you, for treating you like you were invisible. You saw me when it mattered. Jack turned to face her fully. You made a bet as a joke, but you honored it as a promise. You gave Nia her future. You gave me mine. That's not invisibility. That's grace. The words hung between them like a prayer. About that bet, Mara said, her heart pounding. The marriage proposal. I know it was a joke, but you're about to make it weird by acknowledging the fact that we've been dancing around each other for 6 months. Jack's smile was gentle. Yeah, I noticed. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics, HR concerns, potential conflicts of interest. Mara. Jack stepped closer. I flew you through a storm because you offered to protect my daughter. I helped you destroy Colin because he threatened everything you were building. I took this job because you convinced me I was worth more than cleaning floors. None of that had anything to do with power dynamics. It had everything to do with respect. Is that all it is? Respect? No. His voice dropped. But I wasn't going to say anything until you did. Because you're right, you are my boss, and I won't put you in a position where you feel pressured. Mara's laugh came out shaky. Jack, you're the least pressuring person I've ever met. You're also the most infuriating because you make me want things I swore I was too busy for. What things? She looked up at him. This man who'd been invisible until he wasn't, this janitor who'd become an executive by simply being himself. Partnership, she said. Real partnership. Not just professional. Personal. The kind where we actually acknowledge that flying through storms together creates bonds that don't fit neatly into HR categories. Jack's smile was slow and warm and real. So you're saying the bet's still on the table? I'm saying the bet was always real. I just didn't know it yet. Mara stepped closer. But I'm not rushing into marriage with someone I met 6 months ago, no matter how many corporate coups we've survived together. What are you rushing into? Dinner, tomorrow night. Somewhere that's not this building. Somewhere we can talk about things that aren't work and see if we're as compatible outside the office as we are inside it. That's very rational. I'm a CEO. Rational is my default. Mara paused. Except when I'm making bets with janitors on rooftops. Former janitor, Jack corrected. Current head of human potential. Current man I'm asking on a date. The words settled between them like a promise. Jack's hand found hers warm and calloused and real. Yes. Yes. Yes to dinner. Yes to seeing if we work outside the office. Yes to taking this slow and doing it right. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. And for the record, if we get to the point where marriage is actually on the table, I'm buying you a much better ring than the joke proposal deserves. Mara laughed, and it felt like releasing 6 months of tension. Deal. They stood on the rooftop as the sun set over Manhattan. Hands linked the city sprawling endlessly below them like a promise. 6 months ago, Mara had made a bet she didn't mean. Today, she was making a promise she did. The helicopter sat behind them, ready for whatever storms might come. But for now, the sky was clear. And somewhere in the building below, 500 employees were finishing their day. Some of them in new positions, new offices, new futures that hadn't existed before. A CEO learned to see past uniforms, and a janitor learned to fly again. Sarah Chen was in the engineering department designing waste solutions that would save the company millions. Marcus was in operations streamlining systems with military precision. Teresa was in the boardroom contributing strategies that would shape the company's future. And Jack Rourke was in her 3rd grade classroom telling anyone who would listen that her daddy had the most important job in the world, helping people become who they were always meant to be. The Human Potential Department had promoted 93 people in 6 months, with 200 more in development programs. The company's culture had shifted from competition to collaboration, from hiding to being seen. And it all started with a stupid bet on a rooftop and a man who knew how to fly. Mara squeezed Jack's hand. Thank you. For what? For being exactly who you are, for not staying invisible when it was easier, for showing me that the best people are often the ones we overlook. You showed yourself that, Jack said. I just flew the helicopter. You did more than that. Yeah. His smile was soft. I guess I did. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The city lights began to flicker on one by one, until Manhattan glowed like a constellation. Mara leaned into Jack's shoulder, feeling his arm come around her steady and sure. About tomorrow night, she said. Where should we go? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can talk. Jack paused. And somewhere Nia can't find us because she's been planning our wedding for 3 months, and I don't want to encourage her. Mara laughed. She's planning our wedding. She has a Pinterest board. It's terrifying. She's 8. She's very organized. Jack's expression was fond. She also told me last week that you'd be a good mom because you see people's potential, which apparently is the most important quality in a parent. The words hit Mara like a freight train. The casual mention of motherhood of futures neither of them had explicitly discussed of a little girl who'd already decided Mara belonged in their lives. That's a lot of pressure, she managed. She's 8. Everything's a lot of pressure. Jack's arm tightened around her. But for what it's worth, I think she's right. You do see potential. You saw mine when everyone else saw a janitor. You saw this company's when everyone else saw a failing legacy. You see possibilities where other people see limitations. Is that your way of saying you're not terrified of where this is going? I'm terrified. Jack's honesty was devastating. I'm terrified of screwing this up, of letting Nia get attached, and then losing you, of mixing professional and personal in ways that could explode both. But I'm more terrified of not trying, of letting fear keep me invisible when you're offering to see me. Mara turned in his arms, looking up at his face, this man who'd saved her company, her career, possibly her life, and was now trusting her with his heart and his daughters. I won't hurt her, she said fiercely. I won't hurt you. I'm not making promises about forever because I don't believe in fairy tales. But I promise to be honest, to communicate, to try. That's all I can offer. That's all I'm asking. Jack's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her throat tight. One day at a time. One dinner at a time. One real conversation at a time. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Deal. He kissed her, then soft and careful and real, tasting like coffee and promises and new beginnings. The city sprawled below them, indifferent and eternal, and Mara felt something settle in her chest that felt suspiciously like home. When they pulled apart, Jack's smile was crooked. So I guess the bet's really on now. I guess it is. Mara's own smile matched his. Though I should warn you, I'm very slow at deciding on marriage. Could take years. I'm a patient man. Jack glanced at the helicopter. I waited 3 years to fly again. I can wait for you. Good. Mara laced her fingers through his. Because I'm worth waiting for. I know. They stood on the rooftop as night settled over Manhattan, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, building something real from a joke that became a promise. Below them, the city hummed with life. Behind them, the helicopter waited, ready for whatever came next. And ahead of them stretched a future neither could predict, but both were willing to try for. 6 months ago, Mara Ellington had mocked a janitor with a marriage proposal. Today she was falling for a man who'd taught her the most important lesson of her career. The best people are the ones you almost overlook, and the greatest partnerships start when you finally learn to see. The rooftop wind picked up, pulling at her hair, and Jack's arm tightened around her waist. Ready to go down? He asked. Not yet. Mara leaned into his warmth. Let's stay up here a little longer. In the place where it all started. Where you made a bet you didn't mean. Where I made a bet that saved everything. She corrected him, looking up at the stars beginning to emerge above the city lights. Best stupid decision I ever made. Jack's laugh was warm against her hair. I'll remind you of that when Nia starts showing you her Pinterest board. I'm ready. You're not. Probably not. Mara smiled. But I'll try anyway. They stood together as the city settled into night, as the wind whispered promises, as the future unfolded before them, uncertain and bright. And somewhere in Queens, an 8-year-old girl was adding another pin to her wedding board, absolutely certain that her daddy and Ms. Ellington were going to live happily ever after, because that's what happened when people finally saw each other clearly. She wasn't wrong. But that's a story for another day. Tonight, on a rooftop 60 stories above Manhattan, a CEO and her head of human potential stood hand in hand watching the city glow and chose to believe in possibilities. The helicopter sat silent behind them. The storm had passed, and the real adventure was only just beginning.